What is up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Limited Resources. This is episode number 646. My name is Marshall. I'm one of your Limited Resources, and joining me on the line all the way from Denver, Colorado, it's Luis Scott-Vargas. Luis, it's set review time.
Sure is, and we've got some sweet factions to go over. I like the three color sets, and I like a lot of what they've done in New Capenna, so I'm looking forward to kind of reviewing these cards.
That's right. We've got Streets of New Capenna. Excuse me. All of the commons and uncommons are going to be reviewed today. We're going to tell you our thoughts on them. We're going to break them down in detail. We're even going to give you a grade on them so that when you jump into your first drafts or sealed events, you're going to have an idea of what's going on in this set, and hopefully your opponent won't. Before we get into that, let's talk about our sponsors, channelfireball.com. If you need Streets of New Capenna, if you want to get yourself a little booster box, maybe some singles, whatever you may want, collector boosters, you can go to channelfireball.com to pick them up right now. You can pre-order once they're able to ship to you. Those things will be in the mail and on their way to you. And this is a great way to line up the product that you want to get ahead of time. You can choose. They usually have bundles and stuff like that too, where you can kind of group things together, maybe get a little discount or get a pre-release like experience at home. Even there's a whole bunch of different ways that you can interact with the new set. You can even just get singles. You can pre-order singles if you're just like, look, that's the card I want for my deck. That's the only card I need. Then you can just order the single from Channel Fireball. It's all available there, again, via their marketplace. They've got a marketplace of sellers that will combine together in the CFB marketplace to provide you with the best shipping, the best prices, the best customer service, all of it. And it's all in one place, channelfireball.com. If you want to get better at Magic, kind of assume you do. That's why you're here, right? You can also check out CFB Pro. This is premium content from some of the best players and teachers in the world of Magic, and they will show you how to win. You can check all of that out at channelfireball.com. If you do, I'd love it if you'd use the affiliate code LR at checkout. It lets them know that we're the ones that sent you over there, and it helps out the show, and we do appreciate it. Show's also brought to you by FTX. That's FTX.com outside the US and FTX.US within. This is a safe, regulated place for you to buy, sell, and trade digital assets. If you are looking to get into this market, if you want to explore the world of digital assets, cryptocurrencies and such, this is the place to go. Once you're ready for it, FTX is ready for you. You can hop over there. They have an app. They have a website. Again, there's a US-based site because of regulations, right? Because they are regulated and they, comply with all of the necessary regulations as far as that goes, so that you can rest assured that they're playing by the rules. Then when you get in, you can interact with all of your assets however you want, from the website to the app. And it makes it very easy with a nice interface, and you can get all the information put in front of you at FTX.com outside the US, FTX.US within. I will remind you that this is a form of investing, and that carries risk. And what that means is you need to consult an investment professional before you do investment of any kind. You need to do your due diligence on this stuff to understand the risks and the rewards that are possible from it. But when you're ready, FTX is ready for you. Please do check them out. Last but not least, the Patreon. We have a Patreon for this show, patreon.com/limited resources. Every person that signs up gets a thank you card and a sticker in the mail. You can put the sticker on your laptop, your water bottle, or whatever, and you can, do whatever you want with the thank you card. Frame it, put it on the wall, throw it in the garbage. Whatever you prefer, you're going to get one no matter what level you're at. We want to say thank you to everybody over on the Patreon for their continued support. It does mean the world to us, and we really, really appreciate it. Luis, we're going to go over every single common and uncommon in this set in Streets of New Capenna today, but we're also going to be giving these cards grades at the end of it.
Yeah, so our grading scale, as usual, is an A through F scale with 2 subgrades. So let's start at the top. A's are bombs, game winners, cards that are good in many situations, especially when behind, and the best cards in the set. We're talking spells like Wandering Emperor, Fable of the Mirror Breaker. Cheap is often a great bonus, but really you're just thinking the mythic dragons of the set, the cards that you really want to open in your booster packs. B's, these are cards that actively pull you towards your colors. Headliners for a set, go-to cards, and reason to be in a pair of colors, clan, or guild, or in this case, a faction. So these are cards that will pull you towards one of the 3 color factions. Actually, B is a great grade for those because you're going to have to commit at some point here. Mm-hmm. So we're talking cards like Beside You Reaches Skyward, Colossal Sky Turtle, Replication Specialist. C's are playable. These are the pawns of Limited. fairly interchangeable, and you end up with a bunch of them in your deck. Every deck has, the majority of the cards being Cs. So we're talking cards like Network Disruptor, Fang of Shigeki. These are cards that are sometimes playable, but you would prefer not to run them. You'd be pretty unhappy if you did. And these are like kind of the mediocre, junky cards, a little too expensive, a little too situational. Cards like Aki Ronin or Jukai Trainee. Fs. These are cards that are basically just unplayable, and you should not put them in your deck. Cards that cost 10 to 12 mana, cards that have incredibly narrow effects. So we're talking Mirror Box, Bronze Cudgels. We have two kind of subcategories. Well, the first one is sideboard. So these are cards that you typically don't main deck, but if you're playing best of 3, you'll sideboard them in. And these are cards that answer specific things like destroy target artifact, or destroy target creature with flying. So cards like Lucky Offering or Explosive Entry. And lastly, build around cards that can be really powerful if you enable them, but require a little work to get there. And so they'll get a build around grade. So cards like Brilliant Restoration and Oni Cult Anvil. So that's our grading system. And in general, the commentary on the cards will give you a lot of the information you need to know. The purpose of the grades is help you in comparing two cards. At the end of the day, how good do we think this card is?
That's right. Now we're going to get into these in a little bit of a weird order because there are these families, right? Factions, I don't know what we're supposed to call them, but these 3-color trios that are going to be represented. There's 5 of them, and we're going to go through those first. So cards that are sort of headliners for their family, and then we'll go through the rest of the gold cards, and then we'll do the individual colors and the colorless cards. So the first one we're going to start with is Brokers, and Brokers is green, white, blue, otherwise known as Bant. Our first card up is Broker's Charm, and this costs exactly Bant. If we say, it costs a Brokers or the Bant mana, then that costs 1 of each. So this is a green, a white, and a blue. It's an instant. This is uncommon, and it says choose 1. Target creature you control gets +1/+0 until end of turn. It deals damage equal to its power to target creature, planeswalker, and opponent control. So instant speed, a little bit of a bump plus a bite. Then the other options are destroy an enchantment or draw 2 cards. Hello.
So the way I typically evaluate these charms, they're really sweet, by the way. I love that the charms are coming back. They're a highlight of every kind of set like this, which is why you see them in every set like this. Mm-hmm. Is if they have 2 good abilities, then that's already enough to make it a very good card.
Yep, for sure.
Really, if they just have 1 good ability, like target creature you control gets +1/+0 and then bite something, like at instant speed for 3 mana, that's already a card you're pretty happy to put in your deck. Mm-hmm. This card would be playable. It'd be like a C+ if it literally had no other ability. But because of the flexibility, what typically you'll see is like 1 to 2 very good, like kind of wide-ranging, powerful abilities. In this case, the bite and then the draw 2 cards. And then 1 more specific ability that's either a little less powerful or a little more narrow. In this case, destroy target enchantment. The sum total, of course, is this is like a B+ because you've got a removal spell if you've got a creature in play. You've got a clean 2 for 1 if you just want to draw 2 cards. And then every now and then, blowing up a key enchantment can be a big swing.
That's right. The 2 other things I'll add that will apply to many, many cards in this set, so it's really important that we cover this off the top, is that this set is designed to let you cast triple colored cards like this. So even though it doesn't mean that it's free, you do have to tend to your mana and make sure that you can do so. The tools are there in this set to do so. So the bar to entry to a card that costs 3 different colors would normally be much, much higher. We're lowering it a lot. We're going to assume that if you put Broker's Charm in your deck, that you're going to be able to cast it most of the time. And so that's something to keep in mind. The one other thing that applies specifically to these charms that have these options are we do like to see things that are good in different game scenarios, right? For example, the bite ability here on this card to kind of shore up a situation where you're a little bit behind. Or draw 2 cards if you're at parity or if you're looking to seal up the game is a nice backup plan where, hey, I don't need to kill any of your stuff. Well, I can still draw 2 cards and keep churning through. So the flexibility really matters on these charms as well. Okay, so there's Broker's Charm B+. Next is Disciplined Duelist, same mana cost here. This is green, white, blue. This is a 2/1 human citizen at uncommon. It's got double strike, and when it enters the battlefield, it has a shield counter on it. And I'll read this once for shield counters. If it would be dealt damage, that's any amount, or destroyed, remove a shield counter from it instead. It has to die twice in most scenarios. Very nice.
Yeah, I really like Disciplined Duelist because it's hard hitting enough they can't ignore it, right? Mm-hmm. You can't just take 4 a turn. It brawls pretty well. Like a 2/1 first strike is already pretty hard to beat, and this even has double strike, so it'll be able to just straight up beat like things with 2 toughness and trade for things with 4 toughness. But then that shield counter means they need to either throw an extra creature away or use an extra spell to deal with it. So it's good against creatures, it's good against spells, and it can't be ignored.
Yeah,
a lot of what you want for 3 mana, and it works nicely if you can pump it up. So I do want to kind of add a little. Basically, we're treating mana costs like this, 1 blue, 1 green, 1 white, as kind of standard, that most of your decks will be able to cast them. If this was a normal set, we would be like, well, Disciplined Duelist is powerful, but pretty hard to cast. I don't know if it's worth stretching your mana base. We're basically not taking any points off for having these casting costs. It's not to say that you can do no work and just play 6 of each land type and expect things to work, but the set is set up, and we'll see some cards that help you with this to let you do this. And so we're going to assume Disciplined Duelist is a card you can cast turn 3 or 4 most of the time that you have a good version of the deck.
Yeah. So what do you want to give the Duelist?
I would give Disciplined Duelist a B.
Yeah, I would too. I mean, it just it mostly demands a 2-for-1 to get rid of it. You have to get rid of the shield counter and then the creature itself. There are some removal, -1, -1 will take it out, but yeah. Next is Lagrella the Magpie. Same mana cost here. This is green, white, blue for a 2/3.
Well, before you go on, I'd like to say in English what the card does, and then if you want, you can read the text later.
Yeah, man, I had to read this thing like 4 times. A couple people opened it at the pre-release, and it's just so difficult to parse.
I have not met a human being who reads the card and understands what it does on first
No,
read.
We did sort it out, but it took like Serge the Judge plus 2 other people. At any rate, it's a 2/3, and it says, when Lagrella the Magpie enters the battlefield, exile any number of other target creatures controlled by different players until Lagrella leaves the battlefield. When an exiled card enters the battlefield under your control this way, put 2 +1/+1 counters on it.
So what this means in a world where you didn't have to template it for Commander, which I understand why they did, when you play this, you can exile one of their creatures and another one of your creatures, not herself.
Yep.
And they come back when she dies or otherwise leaves the battlefield. And if one of your creatures comes back this way, it gets 2 +1/+1 counters. So the card's very strong because
it's
first of all, it's optional as to whether you want to remove one of yours. So at very worst, it's a 2/3 Banisher Priest, right? It comes in, eats their creature for a while, and then maybe when this dies or gets bounced, your creature comes back. But it gives you the option of also tucking one of your creatures on Hideaway, and then when it comes back, it has 2 +1/+1 counters on it. I think a lot of the time, you're going to want to toss one of your creatures in there. First of all, you could toss an enter the battlefield trigger creature in, and that would be immediate payment. But even without that, what you do is you put your 2/2 or 3/3 under Lagrella, and then if they never kill Lagrella, well, their creature's gone forever too. And if they do, you get a little bonus. So obviously it's going to depend on the situation, but having that option is pretty powerful. I just think that the text box is kind of an abomination. So text box aside, I would give Lagrella a B+. I think Lagrella is quite strong. Yeah,
I would too. I mean, this is a classic 2-for-1, and it even has some upside on it too for free. Spar's Adjudicators is the last one. This is a common, by the way, and there is a full cycle of these as well. And these are really important to the thing that I talked about, and then Luis also talked about, which was that they give you mana fixing in the set. And there's one of these for each color. So this one has the text on it, and this is the text that they all share. 2 generic mana and exile it from your hand. And then you can give target land the ability to cast for any of the colors in its family. So in this case, a green, a white, or a blue. And then the cool part is you can cast Spar's Adjudicators for as long as it remains exiled. So at any point, you can pay 2 mana to make one of your lands upgraded into a tri-land. And then later down the road, when you don't need the mana fixing anymore, or when you just need to cast a spell, you can cast whatever it was. In this case, it's 2 green, white, blue. So 5 mana for a 4/4 cat citizen. And when it enters the battlefield, target creature an opponent controls can't attack or block until your next turn. So you even get a nice body, a 5 mana 4/4 with a relevant ETB ability that, if you find yourself with 2 extra mana, really at any point, you can upgrade a land. Very, very nice. And a really clever design. I don't think I ever would have come up with a design like this.
Yeah, this cycle is a really cool way to a new take on mana fixing. It doesn't increase your total mana production, but taking turn 2 off, you now make yourself a tri-land. It's a little bit like the panoramas, But the part that's really nice about this is eventually you cast it. And due to the nature of these cards, even if you're like white-blue, you could play Sparrow's Adjudicators. At the very least, it can cast itself.
Yes.
Which is
it's
really
interesting
cool.
because it also opens up splashing from the other ones, right? Because you could just pay the two colorless, get the splash, and then cast it off of the land that you augmented. So there's a lot of play to these that are pretty cool. Now, the one thing they're not like 2-for-1s. Like you're not like getting a land out of the deal. You're just making your land a little bit better. But to me, that's a really clever and really cool design. And again, every family has one of these. I think that these will be bread and butter cards that we'll see drafted and draft out. Like, I just think that, you'll run these when you get them. They're all good too.
Yeah. Sparrow's Adjudicators is quite a real card when you play it. A 4/4 that stuns one of their creatures for like a whole turn cycle. That's great. Plus mana fixing.
Yeah.
I'm going to want to say like about C+ on all of these.
That's what I think.
I think that's where you're going to end up. Because in an ideal world, you don't play these on turn 2. You just play a card. But my experience with these kinds of sets is often you'll spend some time fixing your mana and then you have a lot of powerful cards after that. These fit in perfectly for that.
Totally. And just, you could do it any time, even on your opponent's turn. Just if you have 2 mana at any point, there's almost no downside to doing this. It's very difficult. Like they're not going to get interacted with in Exile. So you could just do it kind of for free. Okay. Let's move to the next family, which is Obscura. So this was also known as Esper. So white, blue, and black. Our first card is called Nimble Larcenist. I guess we could go in the same, whatever. Nimble Larcenist. So white, blue, black for a 2/1 flying bird rogue at uncommon. When it enters the battlefield, target opponent reveals their hand. You choose an artifact, instant, or sorcery card from it and exile that card.
So it's a duress on wheels. It can't take creatures. So artifact, instant, sorcery. Mostly just hitting the spell element. But you also get a 2/1 flyer. So if you get a card with this, it's fantastic. 3 mana 2/1 flyer. That's a 2-for-1 that got a spell out of their hand. Excellent. If you end up missing on this, obviously it's not the most exciting. This is one of the cards that most punishes you for not hitting your 3 colors on time.
Right.
Because a lot of these cards, you don't play one till turn 5, right? Disciplined Duelist, you play it on turn 5, still going to have a pretty good effect on the game. The chances that you miss go up dramatically if you don't play Nimble Arsonist on curve. So something to keep in mind, but it is a B because when you cast it and you get a card, it's very good. And most decks will have things that you'll get if you play this early enough. Yeah.
So make sure that you can cast it on time and you'll get a B out of Nimble Larcenist. Next is Obscura Charm. So here's the charm again. White, blue, black for an instant. Choose one. Return target multicolored permanent with multicolored permanent card with mana value 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped. That's instant speed. Counter target instant or sorcery spell, or destroy target creature or planeswalker with mana value 3 or less. That seems pretty good. I kind of like the other one a little bit better, perhaps, but getting something back from the graveyard, it's conditional. It has to be 3 or less and multicolored to get it back, and of course has to be a permanent. Countering an instant or sorcery spell is a little narrow, but fine. And then the bread and butter here is destroy a cheaper creature. A creature with mana value 3 or less and limited is something that you'll definitely run. And when you tack on the other stuff, you'll be happy with it as well. But this one, to me, is not quite, throwing draw 2 cards on one of these charms is kind of a fail safe, that moves it so that you don't mind really what else is on there. And this one doesn't have that.
Yeah, I think that the second and third modes cover so much of your bases where early game, killing a creature with mana value 3 or less is pretty powerful. And then late game, countering instant or sorcery is really good because those are often like the swingier cards at that point. Yeah. And I don't think it's going to be that hard to find something for the first mode, though. That's going to be the least used mode is my guess. Yeah. Another way to put it is the cap on this in most scenarios is a 1-for-1, but it does give you a wide range of 1-for-1s to choose from. So you'll be able to fire this off. Like, I don't think that there'll be games where you just can't cast this. Like that would be a very, very weird scenario. So I would give Obscura Charm a B. Yeah, same. Quasar, Augur of Agonies is the legendary uncommon for Obscura. So it's 1 white, blue, black. So 4 mana for a 3/4 legendary Cephalid Advisor. And whenever you draw a card, target opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. Ooh, yeah. Yeah, I think that Queso here is going to be one of the more dominant cards on most boards, because by itself, it just sits there and drains your opponent for 1 every turn, which is actually pretty annoying. It's hard to make headway when you start every turn with a 2-point life swing, right, for your opponent. And then one of the mechanics in Obscura here is connive, where you're just drawing extra cards.
Yes.
And it's just not hard to imagine where this is going to drain them for 4 or 5 life over the next 3 turns. And at that point, you just come to a card that when you play it, your opponent's like, I've got to kill it. If I can't kill it, this game's not going to go well. That's the sort of thing that you want. It's one of your flagship cards. So I would say B+ for Keza, just a card that's just going to really have a huge impact on any game. And, is a 3/4 for 4 is not a bad stat line. Overall, very good card.
Yeah, B+ for Keza, Augur of Agonies, really good card. And then we have this land, augmenting card here. This is Shattered Seraph. Now, this one costs 7. So 4 white, blue, black for a 4/4 flying angel rogue. And when it enters the battlefield, you gain 3 life. And then it has the same pay 2 mana, exile it to make a land tap for any of the colors thing. So this one's clearly aimed at the higher end, but what a nice stabilizer, right? Yeah, it's a little expensive at 7, but you get a 4/4 flyer, which is a good blocker, right? It's tough to get through that. And you gain 3 life to give you a buffer, so that if you were kind of on life support, all of a sudden, you're kind of back in the game again.
Yeah, at 7 mana, this is going to take a while to get online, but it's like you get mana fixing until you cast your 7-drop, and then you gain 3 life, which means you kind of make up for the fact that this is like a turn later than you would kind of want it to be. If you look at the rest of the cycle, they're a little bit cheaper. But I don't know, one of the big risks of playing a 7-drop is if your opponent removes it, and here, gaining 3, that goes a long way. We've seen that with like the Honey Mammoth type cards. I like Shattered Seraph at C+. I think the card is going to be desirable. One thing to note with this cycle is they don't stack that well. Like, once you've used one, you don't really need it to use another one most games.
Right.
So once I have 2 Shattered Seraphs, if I'm Obscura, the third one goes way down in my pick order.
Okay. Yeah. First one, really good. Second one, okay, sure. Third one, not so much. Let's move on to Maestros, which is Grixis. So this is blue, black, and red. The first one is the creature. It's Corpse Appraiser for blue, black, and red. It's a 3/3 vampire rogue at uncommon. And when Corpse Appraiser enters the battlefield, exile up to 1 target creature card from a graveyard. If a card is put into exile this way, look at the top 3 cards of your library, then put one of those cards in your hand and the rest into your graveyard. Nice. 3/3 for 3. The only requirement, the only setup for this is that there is a creature in a graveyard when you cast it. And you're not only going to get a card out of it, you're going to get some card selection too. That's great.
Yeah, you get to cast Strategic Planning if there's a creature in a graveyard. And on a 3/3 for 3, like I am in for that. So
definitely.
B+ on Corpse Appraiser for me.
Yeah, that's just straight up value card. Just make sure there's a creature in the yard. You can do your own even, and off you go. Maestro's Charm is next. It is black, blue, red once again. For an instant, again, uncommon, choose one of the following 3. Look at the top 5 cards of your library. Put one of those cards into your hand and the rest into your graveyard. That's aggro. Or each opponent loses 3 life and you gain 3 life. Or Maestro's Charm deals 5 damage to target creature or planeswalker. Dang, right. Man, they're not messing around with these things.
Again, the 5 damage mode covers your bases. It's all upside from here. That's perfectly fine. This just reads kill target creature, with some small exceptions. And then the look at the top 5 card mode. Yeah, you're not like in love with using up your powerful charm to get the best of your top 5 cards, but if you're in a board situation where dealing 5 isn't good enough and you got nothing else to do, it's fine. You're digging for a specific card. Maybe you have a game-ending bomb that will just win you the game on the spot. And then lastly, draining them for 3 is a mode you're not going to use that often, but it's going to be really good when you want it.
When you do, the game's over.
Yeah, it will frequently end the game, whether that's killing them on 3 or making it so their lethal attack is no longer lethal, and then you can crack back for the win. So B+ on Maestro's Charm for me. Just getting the deal 5 mode means I'm loving whatever else I get, and the 2 other modes are nice and situational.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Is that what I mentioned before about how we like things to be good in varied situations. That middle mode, the Drain 3, that is one of the best possible for the situations where it's good. Remembering also that this is an instant. Your opponent does not know that it's coming, so big deal. So B+ for Maestro's Charm. Next is Cormella Glamour Thief. So this is 1 black, blue, red for a 2/4 legendary vampire rogue and uncommon with haste. And you can pay 1 and tap Cormella to add blue, black, red, but you can only spend that mana to cast instant or sorcery spells. But here's the thing. So you get a little bit of a mana bump there, especially the turn after she's down. I mean, you can use the ability right away. So that could be pretty cool if you have cheap spells, but you can cast something pretty expensive the next turn. But when Cormella dies, return up to 1 target instant or sorcery card from your graveyard to your hand. So you even get some card advantage out of the deal too. I'm a fan.
Yeah, I mean, overall, you're leaning a lot on the dies part.
Yes,
because you're not gonna use the mana all that often. Sometimes you will; it'll be nice. But a 4-mana 2/4 haste that dies into a card, yeah, I'm in for that. And then sometimes you're gonna use it to double spell or cast something really big. Works out perfectly well. The one thing is you just need to have 7 or 8 instants or sorceries so that you're ideally never put in a position where you cast her without there being one in your graveyard already or one about to be in your graveyard. Like sometimes on turn 5, you go like cast her, use her ability, and then cast a 3-mana spell right away. And that's a pretty cool play. Like playing her and leaving up Maestro's Charm and passing seems pretty good.
Yeah, for sure. I like B- on Cormella. I'm not, this card does require some setup costs. There's going to be times where the activated ability doesn't do anything, and a 2/4 haste on a 4-mana triple gold card. There's going to be a lot of times where it's not really about like play Cormella, attack you for 2. There's nothing that stands out here as just like, wow, I need that in my deck. That's amazing. But it all adds up to me to a pretty powerful card. So I'd go B-.
I like B- on Carmella. If you end up in the super spell heavy deck, you can bump it up to B+, but that's, I think, where I would start.
And then the land fixer is Glamorous Outlaw. This one costs 6, so 3 blue, black, red for a 4/5 vampire rogue. And when it enters a battlefield, it does 2 damage to each opponent and you scry 2. And then it has the same pay 2 mana, exile it to make one of your lands. Tap for any of the colors for it.
Oh, yeah. I mean,
yeah.
As we've seen with Imperial Oath, Scry on a 6-mana card is really strong because lands are probably dead. You have 3 colors worth of lands already. You're casting Glamorous Outlaw. So you can just zip past any lands, try to find some spells, and end up in a really good spot. So I actually am edging towards on B- on Glamorous Outlaw. I think that casting this looks better than casting most of the other cards in this cycle.
Okay. Yeah, I would... Sure, C plus B minus for Glamour. I mean, it's right in that range, but you're right. The time when you actually hit that Scry 2 is huge. Okay, let's move to Riveteers, also known as Jund. This the creature is Crew Captain, which costs black, green, red, as you might imagine. It's a 4/2 human warrior at uncommon with haste, and it says it has indestructible as long as it entered the battlefield this turn.
So
I'm less excited about this one.
Is you just play the Crew Captain, whack them for 4. They can't do anything about it. And then next turn, you've got a 4/2 that they're going to trade off for. So, right. Yeah, I mean, this is a little bit lackluster compared to some of these powerful gold cards that we're going to see in the rest of these cycles. But if you are an aggressive deck, it can be good. I'm just a little skeptical of 3-color cards that really want to be attacking because... And
on turn 3, like, that's when you want this.
This falls off a little bit later. So,
yeah.
I would probably give a C+ to Crew Captain. I think it's going to hit pretty hard, but if you have a deck that can use that.
I'm lower. I would go C-.
D-
at the highest.
Highest. Can I get a D? Can I get a D
D
here?
plus maybe. I don't think this card's very good. Like I think that like if it was 3 mana, do 4 to your opponent, you'd be like, I don't really want to play that. This is better than that, but not a lot. It just trades off for whatever their crappiest thing is after that initial hit. And they even have the option of blocking it that first turn if they just don't want to take the damage. And then there's the times when you have green and red and you just don't have black mana until turn 5. And it does something, but man, I'd have to be like a serious beatdown deck to be excited about Crew Captain. And when I see a set that's designed around triple colors, my mind is not thinking like, hey, how can I curve out with creatures and kill you? Like that's hard to do,
Yeah, that's fair.
So I would go lower on that, but we'll see. Riveteer's Charm. So here's the charm. It's black, red, green. For an instant, it says choose one. Target opponent sacrifices a creature or planeswalker they control with the highest mana value among creatures and planeswalkers they control. Wow. We've had that effect before, and it's very, very good. Exile the top 3 cards of your library. Until your next end step, you may play those cards. Until your next end step.
So you cast it on their turn. You have your whole turn to cast it. Or you start your turn, let's say turn 6. You cast Riveteer's Charm, exile your top 3. You can play one of those cards. You pass. Next turn, you try to play the other 2.
Okay. And then the last one is exile target player's graveyard, which, generally speaking is a more kind of constructed, focused effect and one that doesn't come up as much in limited. So we're leaning really on the first 2, but I'll tell you, you kind of set this up nicely. There's a checkbox at play here, right? And that first one checks that box.
Basically, this is the mix you want. It's one good removal spell, one good card draw spell, and then one pretty narrow. Like the third mode is actually really weak. Like
right.
you're rarely going to do it, but it doesn't matter because making them sack their biggest thing has turned out to be a very effective removal spell. Soul Shatter was great.
Yeah,
and then getting a 3-for-1 if you have enough mana. Like this isn't like the Broker's Charm, which lets you draw 2. You'd fire that off on turn 3 if you had nothing better to do a lot of the time.
Yeah.
This you don't really want to do because you're not going to get that many cards off it. But when you top deck Riveteer's Charm with 7-8 mana in play, it is just a draw 3 at that point. Really
totally.
not that hard to get 3 cards out of it. So I'm really into Riveteer's Charm. I would give this one a B+. Just the first 2 cover all the scenarios.
Yep.
It's good when you need to kill their creature, and it's good when you need to draw cards. Not really asking for much more than that.
No, and they didn't give you much more than that. But I'm with you. B+
yes.
on Riveteer's Charm. Next is Mr. Orfeo the Boulder. And this is like the rock boulder, not bolder than other people. This is 1 black, green, and red for a 2/4 legendary Rhino Warrior at uncommon. And it says whenever you attack, double target creature's power until end of turn. Oh man, that's a beating. And it's worth noting that it's talking about you, the player, right? Whenever you attack with one of your creatures, not whenever Mr. Orfeo attacks. So this is the type of card that can act as an enchantment, right? It can just sit there and make something bigger every turn, but it also can do it to itself and be just a 4/4 attacker.
I mean, playing this and then attacking and getting +3/+0 on one of your 3/3s or whatever is already pretty nice. But yes, you can attack with Mr. Orfeo as a 4/4 as well. I mean, we're leaning towards the aggressive bent here, but still, even without anything else, this is like, all right, your 2/2s are now a 4/2 that they have to trade with. This kind of actually leads you to a grindy game where you're like attacking with one thing each turn.
Yes.
Because this only gives a bonus to one thing. So you're not really paid off by going wide. But it really does pay you off if you can get like a big trampler into play.
Yeah, and you also can still go wide and just pick your biggest thing and be like, you have to deal with this, and now my little guys are going to get through, right? Like it's not, it's just attack. Like it doesn't have to be with one thing.
If you attack with like a 4/4 and 2 2/2s, now you have an 8/4 and 2 2/2s. They're going to have to deal with that 8/4, and your 2/2s might get in. Right.
So what do you want to give him, a B?
I would give Mr. Orfeo a B. I mean, is better than a 4-mana 4/4, I think, overall, even though he blocks a little worse. But he's not like would a 4-mana 5/5 would be better than Mr. Orfeo. So
I think so too.
You gotta figure out where you're at.
Right. And then the key here also is that you can play this pre-combat and get that bonus right away on another creature. So don't forget that too. All right. And then the land fixer for this family is Masked Bandits. This one also costs 6, so 3 black, red, green. This one's a 5/5 Vigilance Menace. It's also a raccoon rogue, which is kind of funny. And then it has the mana, the land fixing ability as well. So you're getting a 6 mana 5/5 Vigilance Menace, that's an interesting combo. You don't see those two abilities put together that often. A primarily offensive ability and a primarily defensive ability. But yeah, that's a nice body.
Yeah, I like this one a little less than the last couple we've seen, but I think it's a C+ nonetheless. It's just, again, these are the glue that helps, your deck kind of stay in a cohesive fashion because you're able to actually cast your cards.
That's right. And then our last family is Cabaretti, and that's also known as Naya. So red, green, white. This is Brazen Upstart is our creature, and it is red, green, white. It's a 4/2 elf shaman at uncommon. It's got vigilance, and it says when it dies, look at the top 5 cards of your library. You may reveal a creature card from among them, put it into your hand, and put the rest on the bottom in a random order. Nice. It's kind of born to die. It's a 4/2.
I mean, this is a 4/2 that you're pretty happy to trade off. This is it's a little bit like the corpse connoisseur, where you end up basically getting a 3 mana, nice little 2-for-1 creature. In this case, you have to hit a creature, but it's not that hard. And then, of course, a 4/2 vigilance requires an answer. So I like B on Brazen Upstart. Pretty happy to put this card in my deck.
Yeah, same. Get it back. Do more. You're not going to miss very often in limited. Next is Cabaretti Charm. This is red, green, white for an instant and uncommon. It says choose one. Cabaretti Charm deals damage equal to the number of creatures you control to target creature or planeswalker. Or creatures you control get +1/+1 and gain trample until end of turn. Or create 2 1/1 green and white citizen creature tokens. This one's a little worse, huh? It's a little less standalone.
This is really focused on like kind of one of the Cabaretti themes of like getting a bunch of citizen tokens into play and going wide. Because it's like the first mode's good if you've got a lot of creatures. The second mode's also good if you got a lot of creatures.
Yeah.
The third mode makes some creatures. So it's like, okay, so it fits really nicely into this deck because it has 2 payoffs if you've got lots of creatures and 1 way to make creatures. So your other payoffs work.
Yeah.
But slot this into a deck that doesn't have that theme. You still talk about a playable card. I wouldn't cut Cabaretti Charm from any deck that could cast it.
Agreed.
Like, easily. I wouldn't splash it very often. You know what? Because some of the decks that you draft in this format are just going to be, I'm playing Cabaretti. I've got a pretty extensive mix of green, white, and red cards and the fixing to make that work. But sometimes you're like, I'm red, green splashing 3 white cards, 3 gold, white cards. In that case, I don't know that Cabaretti Charm would be very high on my list to splash because
I agree.
If you're not doing this thing, you're often just going to make 2 tokens with it, and that's just not that good. Or you cast it as like a shock, right? It's like, I've got 2 creatures in play, this deals 2 to something. So I would still give this a B-, but it's quite a step below the other charms, unless you are already in this mode, in which case it's a B+, because it's the 2 payoffs and an enabler. Well, that's great if you're doing that deck.
That's right. This one is just simply more focused. So if you're in the thing that it's focusing on, it'll probably be better on average than one that has 3 disparate abilities that don't really overlap that much. This one, though, you need to be in that spot. So keep that in mind for Cabaretti Charm. Next is Rocco Cabaretti Caterer. This is kind of a weird one. So it is white, green, red, X for a legendary elf druid. It's a 3/1. And when Rocco enters the battlefield, if you cast it, you may search your library for a creature card with mana value X or less and put it onto the battlefield, then shuffle. So that's pretty sweet. So you got a 3 mana 3/1. Okay, that's not great. But X, you can pay however much you can pay, and you can go get another creature from your library, put on the battlefield with mana of X. That's pretty great.
Yeah, I think it's okay. It's mostly a 3 mana 3/1 because I'm not sure. I guess it's a 3 mana 3/1 or like a 5 mana 3/1 that gets you a 2/2. You're just not going to have that many 1-drops, is my guess.
Yes.
And at 5 and 6 mana, it's putting some decent stuff into play. I guess at 6 mana, you get a 3/1 plus a 3-drop, which in this set could easily be one of these like nice gold 3-drops.
Yes.
And that's definitely worth 6 mana. It's not great at 3 mana, and you're probably not going to that often have decks that can play it at 4 mana. Yeah, right. But I like it at 5 and 6 mana. So look at this as an expensive card, not a cheap card, and I think you'll have pretty decent results. Obviously, you can play it on turn 3, but you don't really want to do that.
No, that's what I was going to say too. The only time I think you play it for 5 is if you're just quite a bit behind and just need a couple of bodies to help stabilize. And you know what? It does that too. Like if your opponent has that, 1, 2, 3 aggressive start, and you just, can pay, 4 or 5 mana for it, just to get like a 1-drop and this guy or this guy in a 2-drop. Look, that's not going to like end the game for you, but it can help stabilize. And once you get above that point, then you're kind of in business. Like 3 mana, 4 mana for X, all of a sudden is pretty good. I like B for Rocco. I think you're going to just use it as a 5 or a 6-drop, and you're going to get 2 creatures off of it basically every time you play it, instead of the 3 mana 3/1, which is kind of trash.
Yeah, I like B for Rocco as well. Just really, it's important to have a good 2-drop. Like,
yes,
at least one. You really need this to be able to play a ball on 5, otherwise to make it not too pigeonholed.
There you go. Rakish Revelers is the mana fixer for it. It's 2 for Cabaretti. It's 2 red, green, white for a 5/3 elf druid rogue. And when it enters the battlefield, you get a 1/1 green and white citizen token as well. So neither creature has a ability, but you get a 5/3 and a 1/1 for 5 mana, and you still have that mana affixing ability attached to this card as well.
Yeah, it's solid. I wouldn't exactly call it a 2-for-1 because the 1/1 tokens aren't always going to get there, but they definitely are going to have to trade a card for the 5/3, and then in this color combination, getting a token is a little better than normal. So I would say C+ on Rakish Revelers.
I think so too. Yeah, those cards are all very solid, very playable, and probably necessary in the format. So make sure you pay attention. Okay, so that covers the families proper, but we have quite a few more gold cards to cover. So now we're going to go over the color pair cards. So the ones that are just 2 colors. And of course, that means that if you're sticking to just 3 color families, they will go in 2 of them. So this first one is Celestial Regulator, and we'll probably see overlap with the different mechanics in these that will kind of support multiple families. So this one is 1 white-blue for a 2/3 flying Angel Advisor at common. And when it enters a battlefield, choose target creature you don't control and tap it. If you control a creature with a counter on it of any type, the chosen creature doesn't untap during its controller's next untap step. So when it ETBs, you tap something no matter what. And if you happen to have a creature with a counter of any type, then that thing stays frozen for a turn cycle. And it's a 2/3 flyer for 3.
A 2/3 flyer for 3 is a great deal to start with. If you're aggressive, this always works, right? Because you play it, tap the thing, attack them.
Yep.
And then if you're defensive, you really want to get the counter bonus, which I don't think is that hard because Connive is going to give you access to +1/+1 counters. And then if you're aggressive and you get to tap something for 2 turns, then they're in for a world of hurt. I think Celestial Regulator is great. 3 mana 2/3 flying. I mean, that's already something I'm just into. So
only 2
I'd
colors.
go with B on Celestial Regulator. Pretty good for a common.
Okay, yeah, I'll say B- for it, but very, very solid. Exotic Pets is next. This is pretty funny. It's 1 white-blue for an instant. This one's uncommon. Create 2 1/1 blue fish creature tokens with this creature can't be blocked. These are things that we'll see multiple times. These fish tokens, they're unblockable fishes. Then for each kind of counter among creatures you control, put a counter of that kind on either of those tokens. Strangely worded, but if you have a +1/+1 counter on your creature, you can give one of the fish a +1/+1 counter, for example. It's also an instant, by the way, which is important.
So am I just completely off base here? Does this art just not look like an art on a Magic card?
It does not.
This looks like someone took a picture of a TV show.
I wouldn't say that, but it just... look at it next to Celestial Regulator.
Doesn't it look
this
like
majestic angel, and this is like some like iPhone shot of somebody's fish tank or whatever.
It just looks kind of like low res and cartoony to me. I don't know.
It does. It does to me too. Yes.
I don't know. It's just I thought this was, when I first saw this card previewed, someone was putting other real art on it as a joke or something.
That's funny.
I don't know. Maybe I'm just off. But in any case, the card is very good.
It is.
Instant speed, make 2 1/1 unblockables. Pretty nice. And then if you have other counters, some of them are like, one of them's a 2/2 or a 3/3, or you can like make 2 2/2s, or I guess if you have for each kind of counter. So you only get ++1 counter once. Mm-hmm. But if you have like a shield counter, then you end up with like a 2/2 with shield and then a 1/1. So yeah, I mean, the baseline is good, and you're going to get a bonus sometimes, and that's pretty good, even if I have my art gripes. So I like B on Exotic Pets. I mean, 3 mana for 2 1/1 unblockables is actually going to pressure your opponent pretty nicely.
It really does, and it's instant speed too, so they don't know it's coming. It can really throw off combat math. So B for Exotic Pets. Next is Metropolis Angel. This one's 2 blue-white for a 3/1 Angel Soldier at uncommon. It's got flying, and whenever you attack with one or more creatures with counters on them, draw a card.
Yeah, so note that you play this and then attack and remove a shield counter, you immediately get a card or a ++1 counter. So this doesn't need to attack, but it doesn't do the thing itself. Like, this requires other cards to do work because it doesn't give you counters. Yes,
you have to be okay with a 4 mana 3/1 flying in your deck, which is okay.
It's okay. One thing that makes it a little worse is that people are going to want to play any sort of damage dealing effects to clear shield counters, like ping type effects. So this kind of gets caught up in that. But Yeah, I like Metropolis Angel. Most of the decks that you'll put it in, you have the opportunity to get a card out of it. It's not even that much of a win to take a shield counter off the draw card necessarily, because I think the shield counters trade for cards at a pretty high rate. But taking a +1/+1 counter off the draw card, that's something I'm definitely interested in. So definitely interested in Metropolis Angel. I would give it a B-.
What do you mean by taking one off?
Oh, I thought that you had to take the counter off the draw card.
No, it's just attack with one with it.
Oh, in that case, I would give it a B.
Yeah,
I thought it was a little bit weaker than that.
Yeah, I like B for Metropolis Angel. It
I don't know
doesn't
why my
require
brain short-sighted to that, but yeah, Metropolis Angel is great.
Yeah, so there you go. So that covers the blue white. Now we've got the 3 blue black gold cards. This is Snoopy Newsy, pretty good name. Blue black for a 2/2 human rogue. When it ETBs, you mill 2 cards, and then as long as there are, now this is a mechanic that'll come up a bit, 5 or more mana values among cards in your graveyard, Snoopy Newsy gets +1/+1 and has lifelink. So you've got a 2 mana 2/2, which mills you for 2, so that's not great. But then it does become a 3/3 lifelink if you can get 5 different mana values in your graveyard. That is a lot. That is tough. Now, I will say that there's a cycle of lands that we'll get to much later in the review that put themselves into the graveyard upon entering the battlefield, which count as 0 towards your 5. So that's a start that you'll often get kind of spotted to you. Also, Connive can help you get like a land into the yard or whatever. So you'll often have that 0 mana slot covered that can be kind of difficult, but you still have to come up with 4 others. It's hard.
Well, it helps. It adds up. And the color pair, Demir, I guess, that's its theme. So, all 3 cards in this color pair actually even say that same thing. So if you're working towards that, or if you're like, all right, I'm going to get land a lot of the time because there's a common cycle of like evolving wilds, effectively, one for each family, and then this is gonna, so that's 0. So this is going to be a 2. I have 3s, 4s, 5s. You're going to try to build your deck to make it happen. My guess is it won't happen until somewhat late in the game, but a 2-drop that kind of makes the rest of your cards work a little bit better, and then late in the game is a 3/3 lifelink. Yeah, I like that well enough. Also, again, my experience with these sets is that 2-drops, there's just not that many because there's a lot of 3-color cards, have to be 3 or more cost, and as a result, I think you're going to play Snooping Newsy a good amount of the time when you're in this color faction.
The way that I would view these is I don't want to. So there's enablers and payoffs with decks like this, right? Or with mechanics like this, and I view this as an enabler. Like yes. I'm trying to use this because it mills me for 2 and adds to my board and then can get better later. But I want this to be part of a bigger picture where that milling 2 is setting me up for bigger things than just getting +1/+1 and lifelink at some point down the road. Like that's not exactly dreaming big enough. That said, I think Snoopy Newsy's playable. I'd give it a C-. I think it's just fine.
I think it's a C. I think the card is okay.
Okay.
I too view it as more of an enabler than a payoff, though it's nice that it has that aspect to it.
Yeah. Tainted Indulgence is next. This is black-blue for an instant and uncommon. Draw 2 cards, then discard a card unless there are 5 or more mana values among cards in your graveyard.
It's solid. You're not super excited about it baseline, but it's nice that this enables the theme, right? Because you get to choose what to discard. So you're like, all right, I need to discard a 4-drop. To make this work. And then later, if you draw this later, sometimes it's just a 2 mana draw too.
Yeah.
So I think I'd play this most of the time if I was blue black. I would give it a C.
Yeah, I think maybe even C+. Like this is also an enabler, like you said, like you can get the exact card that you need in your yard. Much better though, instead of discarding them from hand, if you can mill them, just because it doesn't cost you cards, but whatever. And then the last one is Syndicate Infiltrator. So this one's 2 blue black for a 3/3 flying vampire wizard at uncommon. But if you meet that criteria of having the 5 or more mana values in your yard, it gets +2/+2. You get kind of a dragon out of the deal. It becomes a 5/5 flyer for 4.
I was already pretty in for a 4 mana 3/3 flyer. So the fact that later in the game it becomes a 5/5 is a nice bonus. And I'm kind of lukewarm on this theme. I think you are too. But look at these 3 cards. They're all cards I think you could justify putting in your deck just regardless. The Newsy less than the others, but that does enable things, like the Corpse Appraiser, right?
Yep.
And Tainted Indulgence and Syndicate Infiltrator, you just put those cards in any blue-black deck and they'll perform.
Yes.
So,
yeah, they're not asking that much of you.
I view the 5 types thing or 5 costs thing as like upside more than I'm going to do this thing.
Okay. I would give B for Syndicate Infiltrator. I mean, that's just like you said, a reasonable floor and a nice ceiling. I mean, and you can also enable these like how about Syndicate Infiltrator plus Tainted Indulgence? You're like, attack with my 3/3, right? And they have to decide if they want to block, because you could fire off Tainted Indulgence, get the bonus mid combat, and all of a sudden they're in a world of hurt.
Yeah, I like B for Syndicate Infiltrator.
Body Dropper is our first red-black card. So this one is red-black for a 2/2 Devil Warrior at common. Whenever you sacrifice another creature, put a +1/+1 counter on Body Dropper, and you can pay red-black and sacrifice another creature to have Body Dropper gain Menace until end of turn.
So if you're going hard on the sacrifice theme, I like that this just passively grows because, you've got it just triggers off all your other stuff. And then it can make the things work if it needs to. It's like, all right, I got to take matters into my own hands. You don't really want to sack a creature to give this menace. That's not a good rate. But there's 2 things. One, if you need to make it work, like we'll see Forge Boss in a second that wants things to trigger off sacrificing. This can do that. And then also when this is like a 7/7, giving it menace can just be lethal, pretty easily. So totally. I like Body Dropper. I like C+ on Body Dropper. I think it's going to be pretty solid. Again, my experience with the sack archetypes is that they don't come together as often as you would like. I would say, like, if you look at every set that has a red-black sack as like a kind of known theme, right? Like there's a uncommon that tells you to sacrifice, and there's a red threaten, which this set has too, and all that. It's like 30% of the time it ends up being a deck you're pretty happy to be in, and like the other 70%, it doesn't come together often, or it rarely comes together, or isn't that good when it comes together. Yeah, I mean, it's a fundamentally flawed strategy, right? Like sacrificing, like the whole point of limited is to get onboard material, and if we start sacrificing it for temporary bonuses or to pile everything in one spot, it's usually not. There needs to be kind of weird incentives in place to make that work. But I like C+ for Body Dropper. It still seems like if this thing comes down on 2 and you're in that deck, like it's going to be a problem. It's just going to pick up counters and start getting you. Fatal Grudge is next. This is same cost, black, red. This one's an uncommon at sorcery speed. Is an additional cost to cast this spell. Sacrifice a non-land permanent. Each opponent chooses a permanent they control that shares a type with the sacrificed permanent and sacrifices it. And then this part gets interesting. You also draw a card out of the deal here. The draw card is what keeps this from being just awful. Right. Because then you're otherwise 2 for 1 in yourself. 2 for 1. Yeah. But the way to get value out of this, the whole joke here is that your deck's built to do sacrifice shenanigans. So the thing you sacrifice isn't a whole card. You're sacrificing a token, something that wants to be sacrificed, right? There's plenty of enablers, and then you're eating one of their cards and you're drawing a card. So you're kind of getting a 2 for 1 yourself if you can make the sacrifice very close to free, and that's the goal. If you can't, then this card is not great. It trades your worst creature for their worst creature, and you draw a card for 2 mana. But if your worst creature is something that's actively good to sacrifice or literally as close to free as it gets, then yeah, Fatal Grudge is fine. Yeah, I would really want to see it surrounded by things like Body Dropper, right? Just like this, I want this card in where I'm getting extra benefits and not just leaning on it to be good in and of itself. It's just okay by itself. But if I'm getting bonuses and I can get a 1 for 1 out of the deal, yeah, that's fine. I'll do it. What do you want to give Fatal Grudge? This is a very difficult card to grade, I think. I would give it a build around C+. Build around, okay. In your if you have a deck that you would describe as red-black sacrifice or Grixis sacrifice or Jund sacrifice for that matter, any deck that you would describe as sacrifice, I believe you will want to include Fatal Grudge in that deck. It will be a good card. If your deck does not have that theme going, I think you're likely not to put this card in your deck very often. It's just not effective removal outside of that. Okay. Build around C+ for Fatal Grudge. Next is Forge Boss. This is 2 black red for a 3/4 human warrior at uncommon. Whenever you sacrifice 1 or more other creatures, Forge Boss deals 2 damage to each opponent. This ability triggers only once each turn. Nice. Yeah, so this is a nice little payoff that can really whittle down their life total. They've really leaned into this ability triggers only once each turn, which I think is kind of cool because on the one hand, it's a fun limiting thing where it's like it cuts off the dream of you sacking 10 things, right?
Yeah.
But I think for limited, it actually plays so much better because it lets you amp up the payoff by a lot. If they didn't have the one each turn, maybe this one could only deal one, and that'd be just a lot less of a good payoff for limited. Probably better for constructed because you can get these broken engines going. But hey, anytime they throw a bone to limited, I'll take it. And Forge Boss is much stronger in this version because it's balanced for limited, not for constructed.
That's right. Yeah, this guy seems great. Also reasonable stat, 3/4 on a 4 mana creature is something that can block and hold its own, even get into combat to add up the extra ability. But yeah, you surround this thing with these sacrifice stuff, and that damage adds up very quickly. You can also do it on your turn and then on their turn if you do have like a repeat sacrifice outlet to really pile up the damage fast. I mean, if you can activate something each turn like a body dropper, like you play Forge Boss, activate body dropper, dome them for 2, get in with the body dropper, then pass and sack something on their turn, get another counter on it. Obviously we're getting up into the 8 mana range here, but still, that Forge Boss is going to close out the game really quickly. So I like it a lot. I would give it a build around grade though, right? I don't think I'm just going to throw this guy in a random deck unless the families that include these just have enough stuff that it's going to be happening anyway, then I would do it. But, if that wasn't the case, I wouldn't play it. So I would give it like a build around B+ for Forge Boss though. This seems like the end game.
Well, it's a build around B+, I think is a fine grade. I might just give this a B grade.
Okay.
I think at 4 mana 3/4, you've got a pretty good chance of just wanting to put this in most decks that can cast it. Like the dream is closer to a B+, so maybe it's more like a B- regular card build around B+. But I think if you had 2 or 3 ways to sacrifice in your deck on cards you'd otherwise just be playing, I think I would put Forge Boss in my deck. It doesn't take many triggers for me to be like, all right, this is a good enough card.
Yeah, plus, especially repeat.
Like all these cards, if you play it and your opponent doesn't know what the makeup of your deck is, they're probably going to try to kill the Forge Boss.
Sure. Yeah.
If your opponent's at 10 and you have this in play, they're not going to sit around and wait to find out how many sacrifice effects.
Yeah, that's very true. And I also will say, so much better with repeatable sacrifice outlets rather than one shots. That moves us to red green. First one is called Jetmir's Fixer. It is red green, so just 2 mana for a 2/2 Cat Warrior at common, and you can pay red green to give it +1/+1 until end of turn. But if you paid treasure as part of that, it gets a +1/+1 counter instead of just +1/+1 until end of turn. This is an interesting card to me, Luis, because this is a 2 mana aggressive card in a set that clearly has itself leaned towards three color decks and the fixing and the time that you need to set up 3 color mana bases and limited. And this thing could just hammer you.
Yeah, it's, the theme of red green is paying for things with treasure. And this plays into that theme. I like that you can play this turn 2. They can't really block it turn 3. And then, it's got some good damage in early, and then later it can grow off the treasures. But also, if you have 6 mana and play this attacks as a 5/5, there's no limit on how many times you can pump it. If you have 3 forests, 3 mountains up. So I like Jetmir's Fixer. I'd give it a C. I think you're just going to be happy with this in most of your decks. Yeah,
I do too. And I'm curious to see how the aggressive bend plays out in the format. Security Rocks is next. This is 2 red-green for a 5/4 Rhino Warrior at uncommon. You can pay red-green rather than pay this spell's mana cost. Spend only mana produced by treasures to cast it. Dang, you can get a 5/4 for 2 if you can treasure it out.
Well, I hate to rain in your parade, but I think this text box is pretty close to blank.
Boo.
Because by the time you have 2 treasures, how often are you going to care that much that you can get a 2 mana discount? I mean, it'll happen sometimes.
It is a heck of a double spell turn when you can pull it off, but yeah, it's not turn 2.
Put this card in your deck so you can cast it for 4 mana. This is one where like maybe there's some wacky combo in constructed, that's really going off. But I think the fact that you need 2 treasures, you can't get any discount if you have 1 treasure means Security Rocks is probably a C+ just because of 4 mana 5/4 is big, but don't stress too much about the treasure bonus there.
Sad. Stimulus Package is the same cost, 2 red-green for an enchantment at uncommon, and when it enters the battlefield, you get 2 treasures. So there you go. But Costs the same as the security rocks. You can also sacrifice a treasure to create a 1/1 green and white citizen creature token.
I'm not too impressed by this because
No.
if it said when you sack a treasure, create a 1/1 token, then I'd be like, all right, here we go.
Yes.
But this is like, cool, it makes 2 treasures and you can sack them to make tokens, but then the treasures are gone and you spent 4 mana for 2 1/1s.
Right.
So like the only reason I could see this being a card I'd want is if I had tons of ways to make massive amounts of treasures, like the rare that lets you tap a land to make a treasure.
Yep.
You know, there's a 6 mana rare enchantment that says tap a land, make a treasure.
Yes.
And then, yeah, that goes off with this.
Right.
Or if I was a deck that had tons of ways to use treasures and just needed treasures badly, but both those seem like very narrow scenarios. So I would give Stimulus Package probably a D. And then, you know, if there's a build around where it fits, it's going to be a little better than that, but you're not going to play it very often.
Yeah, it's weird because I think of it like as a D- or something, but then there's probably a deck that really cares about it. That moves us to green white, which is actually the last color pair. And it's Civil Servant is our first one. It's green white for a 2/3 cat citizen at common. So already a good start. 2 mana, 2/3. And whenever it attacks, you may tap another untapped citizen you control. If you do, Civil Servant gets +1/+0 and gains lifelink until end of turn. Okay.
Solid 2 mana, 2/3 rumbles nicely. And then if you can start making it a 3/3 lifelink, then you're really doing it. Plus, it's a citizen. So if you have multiples of these, they kind of enable themselves. You know, there's some cards that are citizens that aren't tokens, as you'll see. So I'm pretty happy putting Civil Servant in my deck. I would give it a C.
Yeah, me too. That's a good card. You know, solid stats with a reasonable bump. Next is Ceremonial Groundbreaker. This is 1 green white for an equipment. It's uncommon. Equipped creature gets +2/+1 and has trample. So that's really nice. The equip cost, though, is quite expensive. It's 3. But there's an alternate equip cost. You can equip a citizen for 1. That's a token, or like Civil Servant's a cat citizen. The next card's a citizen. That's the sub theme, of course, with this color pair, if you haven't figured it out. Man, 3 mana to get it down, but you can pay 1 to give a creature +2/+1 and trample if it's a citizen, and then like maybe move it to a blocking citizen or whatever. Like this is a type of equipment that really must be dealt with. But the gap between if you're citizen heavy or not is huge, because equip 3 is not very, 2 would be pretty good. 3 is kind of bad, and 1 is excellent. So that's the line for you.
Yeah, if you've got enough Civil Servants, this goes pretty deep. I also like that it's the golden shovel. You know,
That's how it is, isn't it?
The ceremonial breaking ground where like you've got your mare like struggling to like
do that. Totally. We need the dull,
big scissors instead.
Yeah, the dull oversized scissors to cut the ribbon on the next set. So let's assume that you're relatively citizen heavy.
This card's good.
I'm playing it. Yeah.
But because the thing is, if you're citizen heavy, that probably implies you have a bunch of tokens. A +2/+1 trample equipment's also just naturally good with tokens, because it makes you make 1 a 3/2 attack with it. Okay, they traded. Now equip your other, make it a 3/2 attack. So
totally.
It's kind of like a build around B, where if you've got enough citizens, then your citizens can rise up, and if you don't, then maybe not the best fit.
There you go. Darling of the Masses is our last double colored card. It's 2 green white for a 2/4 elf citizen at uncommon. Again, citizen being the key there. Other citizens you control get +1/+0. And whenever Darling of the Masses attacks, create a 1/1 green and white citizen creature token. Dang, that thing's awesome. Man, that's a sick payoff for the citizens deck. It makes them, it pumps them up. You get more and more of them. That is awesome.
Yeah, I mean, this is the again, we're seeing a lot of these days. They know how to make their cards where it's enabler plus payoff all in one, and that that ends up playing out pretty nicely. So I think that you're going to be happy with this, even if you're not playing a super citizen focused deck. It's obviously better there, just as a 2/4 already that makes effectively a 2/1. But I'll give it a B. I think as Darling of the Masses looks like a B to me. Yeah,
Darling of the Masses gets a B. It hits all the things for green white. Okay, that's it for the gold cards. That'll move us into the single colored cards. We're going to start off with white. And our first card up is Boon of Safety. This is white for an instant at common. And it says, put a shield counter on target creature, which, as I read before, same shield counter. And then you get to scry one.
Yeah, it's solid. It doesn't help your creature win a combat against something bigger, but it it's a tiebreaker if you've got two equally sized creatures or two creatures that are going to kill themselves, and it can counter a destroy spell, like destroy target creature. Mm-hmm. So 1 mana to do that plus scry one. On the lower end of combat tricks, I think you're not super thrilled.
Bad, right? Like, this is somewhat equivalent to target creature gets indestructible until end of turn scry one. Like, I'd never play that.
Yeah, the best green common in
yeah. But that's also hexproof. Like, that thing made it so that your creature realistically couldn't die, but this doesn't get around any of the other, like, there are still removal spells.
Bounce or -X sort of things, right, or exile of abilities.
Like, if I'm going to pay, if I'm going to put a card in my deck to protect my creature, I need it to be like Tameo Safekeeping. Like, I need it to be like, this thing cannot die, because it's already not great, right? The card like this. Maybe the counter matters or something. Like, maybe it's like, oh, I got the counter and that's what I wanted.
If you're playing, if you're leaning into the blue-white theme, then yeah, getting the counter on can help, set up your 3/1 angel or what have you. But then you're also casting this preemptively.
Right. So, that makes me shiver. I would give Boon of Safety a D. I assume that we will not be seeing these, game in and game out.
Yep, D for Boon of Safety.
Broker's Initiate is next. This is white for a 0/4 cat citizen at common, and you can pay 4 and a blue or 4 and a green to have its base power and toughness be 5/5 until end of turn.
This whole cycle seems kind of bad to me, where it's like the creature's not good enough to begin with, but then you can pay a bunch of mana to make it, better.
It's a citizen. Like, is that the only thing that I really care about here? I don't know.
Yeah, it's a citizen. It can block for the early game, and then in the late game, you're like, spend my whole turn, but make it a 5/5.
Right. Yeah. I would assume that this isn't. These cards have not performed well recently, even though we have really kept our eye on the 1 mana cards. These ones just haven't really been it. It's just your entire turn worth of mana, and these sets tend to set themselves up so that you have stuff to do kind of going forward, and that's not usually going to be a priority. Yeah. I would give it a D. I assume it's just not going to be like a big player.
D for Broker's Initiate. Just most sets have enough ways to spend your mana that you don't need to go looking for kind of bad ones. And these end up being the bad ones.
What about Rafine's Guidance?
Rafine's Guidance. Mm-hmm. White for an enchantment aura. Enchanted creature gets +1/+1. And you may cast Rafine's Guidance from your graveyard by paying 2 and a white rather than paying its cost. So it's a bad aura, but you can recast it.
Yeah. Not interested.
Yeah, I don't think this is where you want to be. It doesn't even work with the counter theme. So
right,
I'm not really into the Guidance. This looks like an F to me.
Yeah, I don't think I'll be playing Rafine's Guidance. What about Backup Agent? By the way, all those 1-drops were very unimpressive, which has not been the case lately. So one of them's definitely going to be the best white common, right? It's just what about Backup Agent?
1 and a white for a 1/1 human citizen at common. When it enters the battlefield, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature. So classic 2 mana 2/2, but you can move the second +1/+1 wherever you want. Works with the counter theme. Can be nice with the go wide theme because it's like another 1/1 that lets you get a little bit of value.
And it
looks like a C- to me.
Yeah, C- for Backup Agent. Citizen's Crowbar. Wow. 1 and a white for an artifact equipment. This one's uncommon. When it enters the battlefield, you get a 1/1 citizen, and then you attach the crowbar to it. The creatures that have the crowbar attached to it get +1/+1, and the ability pay a white and tap it and sacrifice the crowbar to destroy an artifact or enchantment. And the equip cost is 2.
So 2 mana 2/2 that can kill an artifact or enchantment or re-equip as needed. Yeah, I like Citizen's Crowbar. I think you would always play this card.
I think so too. Leaves a citizen
2 with upside.
Yeah. So that's reasonable. I would give it a C. I mean, this is not an enchantment and artifact heavy set, right? Like, none of the factions care particularly about that, I don't think. Or families. Now you got me saying factions. So I wouldn't prioritize this, but I mean, it just seems like a good card. C plus for the crowbar.
I like C plus for Citizen's Crowbar.
Yeah.
I think this is a good bit of value.
Hold for Ransom is next. It's 1 and a white for an enchantment or a common. And enchants a creature. The creature can't attack or block and pays 7 mana. Hold for Ransom's controller sacrifices it and draws a card. Activate only as a sorcery. Boy, that is a steep ransom.
Yeah, well, it's basically pacifism with downside because as expensive as that ability is, it is still worse for you that your opponent has the option. Note that you draw the card. So what happens is you put this on their creature.
Yeah.
They pay the 7 mana ransom, and then you get to sack, or you have to sack Hold for Ransom and draw a card. So they're paying you off, and eventually they're paying to free their creature. Very flavorful. But straight up worse than just pacifism because they now have the option to free their 6/6 if they really want to take it. So it's fine. 7 is a lot, and you get a card back. I would give Hold for Ransom a C plus. I think you're still pretty happy with it.
I think so too. And it really does, that is a steep cost to pay. Illuminator Virtuoso is next. This is 1 and a white for a 1/1 human rogue. It's got double strike and it's uncommon. And whenever Illuminator Virtuoso becomes the target of a spell you control, it connives. And this is the first time that we've seen connive on a card. To connive, you draw a card, then discard a card. And if you discarded a non-land card, you put a +1/+1 counter on this creature. Connive is a great ability, by the way, just getting you a free or a loot here or there with a little bit of upside of the creature growing as well. And of course, that's particularly relevant on double strike, like Illuminator Virtuoso has. The downside here is that you need to target it with your own stuff. So that's a sub theme that is risky, to say the least.
Yeah, but if you have a pump spell to use with this, pump spells go nicely with it just to begin with. It's got a double striker, and then conniving can give you a pretty good advantage by letting you cash in lands for cards. Or in this case, you're probably going to try to discard non-lands because you really want to put a +1/+1 counter on the Virtuoso. So I like a little bit of Virtuoso. I mean, I would play a 2 mana 1/1 double strike in most decks just because that's just a decent rate.
Definitely.
And this has some good upside to it. So that looks like a C plus to me as well.
Me too. Rafine's Informant is next. It's 1 and a white for a 2/1 human wizard at common. When it enters a battlefield, it connives.
I like this one. This is going to be a
really
3/2 a good amount of the time.
Yeah. I mean, 2 mana for potentially a 3/2 that lets you loot. That's very strong for common.
Yeah, and if you don't have a good non-land to discard, you still got a 2/1 that looted when it came into play. So I still probably like C plus for this one. We're still not breaking out of that barrier for the most part. But
I agree.
I like Rafine's Informant. One thing to note is if you're really heavy on connive, especially cheap connive, it does kind of push you to playing fewer lands because you've got looting to draw out of having a land light hand, and then you want to discard spells. And you don't want to discard lands. So you kind of want to change the ratio a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, that's the problem. That's the one thing I don't like about connive as a mechanic. It's not that I wouldn't have made it, but I think that if you're a new player, you're going to be tempted to discard non-lands to it a lot to get the +1/+1 counter. Like the game's kind of telling you, discard a spell so you can get a counter. But I think that, if I watch your stream, it will not be that often that you willfully discard castable spells, to keep some land in your hand or whatever, just to get a +1/+1 counter. That's not usually a good trade-off for the player. It's kind of a thing that you do when you need to, or if you're just never going to be able to cast a spell. And I think that for newer players, that's a bit of a hurdle because they're going to find themselves with no spells left on turn 5, but like a slightly larger team. And so that part I don't love, but for more experienced players like our listeners and stuff, I think that giving these options is really, really cool. C plus for Rafine's Informant. Refuse to Yield is next. It's 1 and a white, instant, uncommon. Target creature gets +2/+7 until end of turn, and you untap it.
Yeah, all
funny,
right,
but I always hate these ones.
Yeah, I mean,
would I rather have +3/+3? Probably.
Yes, I think +3/+3 will be better most of the time.
Even though it's taking like 5, whatever's off the thing, but I don't like it.
I think Refused Yield is okay. It's not great. I think it's probably like a D or D plus. Yeah.
Revelation of Power is next. It's 1 and a white for an instant at common. Target creature gets +2/+2 until end of turn. If it has a counter on it, it also gains flying and lifelink until end of turn. Man, it's so funny. It's like they want to push the, target your stuff, build up your stuff theme. And it's just like, man, this is just a shove over the edge, right? Because like, this is a serviceable combat trick, but if you have a creature that's pumped up in any way, I mean, flying plus lifelink is just like a massive swing for 2 mana here.
Yeah, you imagine playing this on the Duelist and then the Illuminator, and all of a sudden connives, gets a counter, and then attacks them for like 6 in the air or 8 in the air, double striking. I guess it would be so. Or
your Raffine's Informants, a 3/2, and all of a sudden it's a 5/4 or whatever flying lifelink for the. I mean, that's a huge swing.
I think Revelation of Power is probably like a C-. I mean, you're gonna play it, and so in a deck that can get counters on it nicely, then the lifelink is pretty good. But
yeah, I mean, as wary as I am about strategies like that, the payoffs are here. Like a ton of these cards have already targeted stuff or put counters on stuff. So next is Skycrier. This is 1 and a white for a 1/1 bird citizen. It's got flying and lifelink. It's common. And you can, if you'd like, you can pay 3 and a white to have you and target opponent each draw a card.
I mean, 2 mana 1 on flying lifelink is good if you get any sort of stats onto it.
Yeah.
And it's just good by itself. Just pecking away for that little life swing.
It actually does add up.
Look, the draw card ability, it's symmetrical, but you choose when to use it. So you use it when they have a lot more cards than you, so they're more constrained on mana and you're not. Or you do it end of their turn, so you get first crack at playing the card. Plus, if your deck has some really good cards to draw, if like you have a higher card quality, then this can be good. Or if you have better late game, for example. So I think that this is overall a pretty good card. I'd give it a C.
Yeah, I'd like C for Skycrier. It's okay. Gathering Throng. This is yet another in a long line of a certain type of mechanic that are actually quite good. It's 2 and a white for a 3/1 human citizen. It's common. And when it ETBs, you can search your library for any number of cards named Gathering Throng, reveal them, put them into your hand, and then shuffle. That's a real card. Like, that's a 3 mana 3/1. Those trade off for real things on the ground. Those are citizens that get buffed by a bunch of stuff. These cards actually play out pretty well.
Yeah, if you have 2 Gathering Throngs, it's worth playing.
Yeah.
And if you have 3 or 4, I think you're going to be pretty happy. I mean, Legion Conquistador was good, right? That was the 2/2 version of this. And I was pretty happy whenever I had a deck with 3 or 4 of those. I was like, yeah, this is great.
I think this card's better, too. It's a relevant
3/1 is a better type line because you're happy to trade off.
Yeah.
I like C+ for Gathering Throng.
I do, too.
And once you have 2, you really want like the 3rd and 4th.
Yeah, do not sleep on the Throng.
So you remember when you said one of the 1-drops might be the best white common as a joke?
Yeah.
Well, speaking of jokes, this is the best white common, and it is like, I don't understand it. It's Inspiring Overseer, 2 and a white for a 2/1 Angel Cleric at common, again, common, flying, and when it ETBs, you gain a life and draw a card.
Like, when are they going to issue the correction that this was supposed to be an uncommon? Like,
I just am kind of confused. Like, this isn't a 3-color card, but this is probably better than the 2/1 flying that duresses them.
Yes.
And it's monocolored.
And it's just one color. Like,
it always works. You always get your card and you even gain a life.
It is incredible. Yeah. Inspiring
this
Overseers.
Is the best common in the set. And I don't really anticipate ever passing this if I'm in white. And if I'm not in white, take a look at what my colors are and think, man, maybe I should be in white.
Yeah.
Maybe this is the 3rd color I needed, right?
Totally.
And it's just a 3 mana 2/1 flyer that gains a life and draws a card. Like, we saw Spirited Companion, 2 mana 1/1, and Virus Beetle, 2 mana 1/1, they discard a card, as like the best or top commons in Neo. Yep. And this is a 2/1 flyer with the same text as Spirited Companion.
Right.
You pay 1 more mana to get +1/+0 and flying, both of which are huge upgrades. So,
and it's in a context where everybody's kind of scrambling to get their mana underneath them, and this thing's just like, no, I'm good, just white.
Yeah. So it's probably like a B+.
Yeah, B+. Like, this is a common that reaches into the BB+ range. That is extremely unlikely to happen, but Inspiring Overseer is pushed really hard. Kill Shot is next. It's 2 and a white for an instant at common. Destroy target attacking creature.
Fine card.
Yeah.
If you've got flyers or you're defensive, it does pretty well. It also works fine, even if you're like a moderately aggressive deck. At some point they're going to attack you. So I like, probably C+ on Kill Shot.
Yeah, this is bread and butter removal spell for white. Knockout Blow is next. It's 2 and a white. This one's similar, but different. It's an instant. This one's uncommon, and it costs 2 less to cast if it targets a red creature. Knockout Blow deals 4 damage to target attacking or blocking creature, and you gain 2 life. It's a pretty big swing.
I like B- for Knockout Blow.
Yeah, me too.
It's flexible, gains you some life, kills attacking or blocking creatures, and against red, you're just gonna give them the business. Also, in a 3-color set, you're more likely to see any given color because people are playing more colors. So
that's right.
B- for Knockout Blow.
What about Mage's Attendant?
This is 2 and a white for a 3/2 cat rogue and uncommon. And when it enters the battlefield, you create a 1/1 blue wizard token with 1. Sacrifice this creature, counter target non-creature spell unless its controller pays 1.
That's annoying.
So yeah, you get a 1/1 little dorky wizard that force spikes one of their spells or non-creature spells, but also it's a 3/2 plus a 1/1 for 3 mana. So
yeah,
I'm in for that. I like B on Mage's Attendant. You're just going to be thrilled to pick up this card.
Definitely baseline stats plus upside. Patch Up is next. It's 2 and a white for a sorcery. It's uncommon. It says return up to 3 target creature cards with total mana value 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield.
So you get total mana value 3, which means you're breaking even. The dream, I guess, is like a 2 cost plus a 1 cost. You're not really going to get 3 1 costs back that often. I'm not super impressed with these cards. I would give it a C-.
I would give it a D. Like, why is this good at all?
Well, it's good if you've got a lot of the really good 3 mana creatures, right? Like getting more angelic overseers or inspiring overseers back, or if you're playing, if you got the creature like you're playing Cabaretti and you have the 4/2 vigilance, right, for 3 mana, like you get some undercosted creatures. But yes, it is pretty situational. So I still like C- on Patch Up, but yeah, not a card I'm thrilled about.
No, I'm still on D. I'd rather just play another decent creature in that slot. Rumor Gatherer is next. It's 1 white for a 2/1 elf wizard at uncommon. It has Alliance. And the way to think of Alliance is it's like landfall for creatures. And it'll tell you what it does on the card, by the way. This one says whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, so that part you're going to see on all of them, scry 1. If this is the second time this ability has resolved this turn, draw a card instead. Dang.
So if you have this in play, any turn you play 2 creatures, you get a free card. Any turn you only play 1 creature, you get to scry 1. But it's whenever a creature enters the battlefield, so it works with tokens. If you create 2 tokens,
you get both, right?
You get both.
You scry 1, then draw a card?
Yep.
Man, that's really nice. Like, and of course, you have this out. Turn 3, turn 4, you play your second land, you play 2-drop, you scry 1, you play a 2-drop, you draw a card. I mean, that's excellent. Like, this card's something that they have to definitely deal with. And as you mentioned, it counts tokens, as well. So, you're doing the citizens thing or whatever, and you can kind of pop off.
I think that most decks are going to be happy enough to play this because, again, it kind of goes back to the threat on board thing where you just have this on turn 3 and your opponent's going to spend their turn killing it if they can.
100%
I'm not going to wait to find out if you've got 2 2-drops or a way to make 2 tokens.
Also, just like if you have to sit there and your opponent plays this on 3 and then they just play some number of creatures and they get to just scry 3 or 4 times over the next, 5 turns, you're just like, wow, that's pretty powerful. Also, I think a big design hint here is that it's double white, right? Like, damn well they're not trying to put a bunch of double white cards in their triple colored set so that it kind of locks it out of some of them. And so when you see that, that's like, oh, okay. This thing's the business. I would say Rumor Gatherer is a B.
Yeah, I like B for Rumor Gatherer.
What about Celebrity Fencer?
This is 3 and a white for a 3/2 elf druid at common and has Alliance that whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, put a +1/+1 counter on Celebrity Fencer.
That's what a fencer does? It builds big muscles?
I guess so. This one I like a lot less because it takes 2 creatures before this really starts to pay off because a 3/2 and a 4/3 aren't dramatically different in terms of what classes of creatures they can tangle with, but a 5/4 starts to be a lot better. I think this is okay because you're going to be behind the turn you play it and maybe for a turn afterwards, and then you're going to start getting ahead. Yeah. Or in a heavy tokens deck, you're behind the turn you play it, but then the next turn immediately you get 2 or 3 creatures into play. So looks more like a C- to me.
Yeah, I'd say C- for Celebrity Fencer, but that's still playable. Dapper Shieldmate is next. Is 3 and a white for a 2/2 human soldier at common. Dapper Shieldmate enters the battlefield with a shield counter on it, and as long as it's your turn, it gets +2/+0.
So on your turn, you get to attack with a 4/2. The first time they trade a creature for it, it survives thanks to the shield counter, and then afterwards it trades. Yeah, this is fine. This reminds me a little bit of the 4/2 Indestructible that we saw in AFR.
Yep.
And that card wasn't like amazing, but was good when you were pressuring them. This is probably a little worse than that.
I think this is worse than that. Yeah, because it's also worth noting that the shield counter comes off not from lethal damage, but from damage. Yep. Yeah. So like if they have a citizen token and you attack with it, they can be like, sure, I'll trade my citizen token for your shield counter. You know, and now the shield mate really doesn't look great. You just have a 4/2 for 4. I would give it a D. This looks like a card that's not great. I mean, D even if you need to block with it, yeah, D for Dapper. What about Swooping Protector?
It says 3 and a white for a bird citizen and uncommon. It's a 2/1 flash flyer that enters the battlefield with a shield counter on it. So it doesn't actually protect your other creatures, but it can protect you. You can like flash this in when they attack with a 3/2. You get because it has flash, you kind of get the first combat interaction on your terms, which means that the shield counter is often going to just straight up trade for a card. You're going to block a 2/2 or something along those lines.
Yep.
And if you've got this attacking them as a 2/1 flyer with maybe an equipment on it, the shield counter is pretty nice. So I like probably C+ for Swooping Protector.
Sure. C+. Yeah. Ballroom Brawlers. This is 3 white for a 3/5 human warrior at uncommon. And whenever it attacks, it gets it and up to one target creature you control both gain your choice of first strike or lifelink until end of turn.
So they both get the same ability.
Yes.
And if this attacks alone, it still gets the ability.
Okay.
So that's pretty good.
That's pretty good. So a 3/5
attacks as lifelink. Like this is going to be a big swing a lot of the time where you're like attack with Ballroom Brawlers plus a 4/4, gain 7 life.
Yes. And it's got 5 toughness. It's very difficult to kill in combat. Plus it's in white. So you have access to all these counters, combat tricks and stuff to save it. Yeah. I like it. I also like that even if you're a bit behind, if you get to untap with the Brawlers, like you can just attack and gain a bunch of life. It's not going to be easy blocks on the other side. Like,
are we going straight up B on Ballroom Brawlers?
Yeah, I would go with B. B for Ballroom. Like yeah. Did they figure us out? By Your Silence is next. It's 4 and a white for a sorcery at common. Exile target non-land permanent. So there you go. Unconditional sorcery speed removal for 5, but its controller creates a treasure token. How much do we care about that at that point in the game? We've already managed to get 5 mana.
Okay, imagine this scenario. You're playing against blue-white, and like they have 3 islands and 2 planes in play, and they've just played a couple good blue-white cards. And you're like, great. Do you cast By Your Silence on their creature? Because now you're like, oh, man, maybe they are splashing
Find
a
out
black
what
card
their
in
black
their
splash is. Yeah. Oh, God. I don't like that. I feel like, like the longer the game goes, the less the treasure token matters, right? So if this is a 2 mana card and your opponent, has 2 colors and you just hook them up with a treasure and they get to slam a multicolored 4-drop, a turn earlier, like, wow. By this point, we're kind of leaving that time behind, right? We're like, this isn't going to be devastating, but it's still relevant. To me, it's right on the border. If this costs 7 mana and we gave him a treasure, you're like, whatever. Like, you're going to figure out your mana by then anyway. I would say I would probably on average play 1/2 of one of these, right? Like this to me looks like the necessary evil removal rather than the bread and butter, draft in and draft out removal, where you'll play one of these sometimes and a lot of times you won't play it. So that's where I'm going to come down on it for now.
If you have no removal, the first removal is really, really important. Once you have 4 pieces of good removal, this is probably not making the cut. So yeah, I like By Your Silence probably as like a C, but just know when you should run it.
Right. And it is non-land permanent. So it takes care of, weird stuff too, that'll come up. Yeah,
there's an ascendancy, an enchantment in each trio.
There you go. Perfect. Yes. Speakeasy Server is next. This is 4 and a white for a 3/3 flying bird citizen at common. And when it enters the battlefield, you gain 1 life for each other creature you control.
Yeah, I mean, this is going to gain you 2 to 6 life, mostly in the like 1 to 3 range. A decent amount of the time. And that's good enough. It doesn't count itself, but if you reliably gain 2 life, I would always play this card.
Yep.
5 mana, 3/3 flying, gain 2 was good. I mean, Angel of Mercy was gain 3, and that card was fantastic.
Yep.
So just, yes, this gets better in your like token decks, and in a deck where you can play this in game 7 sometimes, then obviously it's fantastic. But even in a deck like, your Obscura deck, where you don't have tons of creatures, if you play this and gain a couple life, you're still going to be satisfied with the outcome. So that looks like probably a C to me.
Yeah. Angelic Observer's the last white one. This is 5 and a white for a 3/3 Angel Advisor with flying. It's uncommon. And it costs 1 less to cast for each citizen you control.
So you really want to have 2 in play to make this good.
Is he even good then?
4 mana, 3/3? Yeah, that's fine. It's not like, knocking your socks off, but
that's
a 4 mana.
Really not knocking any socks off of me. Like, that's like par for the course these days. Like,
I think a 4 mana 3/3 flying is still solid. It turned out that
I need upside. Like, seriously, like I don't.
Well, the upside is that sometimes this costs 1 or 2 mana.
Okay.
But I'm not really looking to build towards this, even though it is even an uncommon. I would just put it in a deck that makes a bunch of citizens, especially since there are a bunch of creatures that just have the type citizen naturally. Mm-hmm. So it's not just tokens.
Okay. Yeah, I'm a little low on it as like a big payoff, but I agree with you. I would definitely put it in the deck with citizens just because it's probably going to do the thing.
Yeah.
I'd give it a C- though. Like I'm not a big fan of the Angelic Observer.
I like C- for Angelic Observer. I really needed this to be a 4/4.
Yeah. Or give me lifelink or, whatever, some other ability. All right. That moves us to blue. An offer you can't refuse. Blue. It costs blue. It's an instant. It's uncommon. Counter target non-creature spell. Its controller creates 2 treasure tokens. Now, come on.
I actually kind of like this.
Come on.
So imagine when you want to side in negate or spell pierce.
Okay.
This is good against those kinds of decks, and it works pretty reliably. It does give them 2 tokens. I would rate this as a sideboard C. I'm not super thrilled about it, but if you have this on a key like turn 6 where you spent 5 mana for your bomb and then countered their removal spell they tapped out for, you're gonna win a good portion of those games.
It's true.
It always does work. Yes, it gives them treasure tokens, so don't cast it early. But it's a counter spell that's good in the mid to late game when you're countering like a key spell. So I'm not super high on it, but I think it has some application.
Okay. Sideboard C. You knew I was going to slam in with an F on this thing.
Yeah. Oh, so I know.
You saved it. Expendable Lackey is next. This is blue for a 1/1 human citizen at common. That's all it is. But if it's in the yard, you can pay 1 and a blue and exile it to make a 1/1 unblockable blue fish token.
I like it. 1 mana 1/1 that dies into a fish. It has flashback as a fish. It's unblockable. So I think this is going to work out pretty nicely in decks that are looking to get onto the board. I would give the Expendable Lackey a C.
Yeah, it might even be a C+, like it knocks off shield counters and it works well with self-mill and stuff. So I think it's just a kind of a good all-arounder. It even happens to be a citizen. Next is Hypnotic Grifter. This is blue for a 1/2 human rogue at uncommon. You can pay 3 to have it connive.
And that does grow it, right? So
yes, it can.
You're like, I'm going to pay 3, now discard an on-land. Now this is a 2/3, and then it becomes a 3/4. In the late game, it can really tear through your deck. I actually think this is good. This is an uncommon because I think you're going to want to play this most of the time.
Do you think so? The 3 is a lot, right? That's the kind of sticking point.
But it gets you to a state where it's growing, so you're not actually completely losing tempo, and you are getting to just never waste mana, have all that's tear through your deck. You stop at 6 lands exactly, so you can activate this twice, that sort of thing. It's just a 1-drop. It's also even a 1/2 to start with. That your opponent, like if they play this on turn 1, you're going to mentally think, okay, at some point I'm going to need to kill that.
Yeah,
and
that's true.
That's a fine card, 1 mana. So I actually kind of like C+ on Hypnotic Grifter.
Okay, yeah, you sold me on it. That has just enough early mid game to justify the late. Next is Slip Out the Back. This is blue for an instant and uncommon. Put a +1/+1 counter on target creature. It phases out. And I'll read what it says. Treat it and anything attached to it as though they don't exist until its controller's next turn. So it mildly buffs one of your creatures and saves it from whatever nonsense it was in. You can block and phase out. You can phase out in response to removal. You can phase out and then cast a sweeper.
Yeah. It's
I don't like
a
any
fine way
of
to
it.
protect your own stuff, but not
Yeah.
something you're super
I
excited
would give
about.
Slip Out the Back a D.
Yeah, I like that.
Witness Protection. This is blue for an enchantment aura at common. Enchant creature loses all abilities and is a green and white citizen creature with base power toughness 1/1 named Legitimate Business Person.
I just absolutely love this for being called Legitimate Business Person.
So great. Oh my God. Whoever was like, we need to literally call the token legitimate business person just wins. Is this a good card? Is this the Blue Swords to Plowshares?
I still don't think these cards play all that well.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, it shuts down big things, but you put this on a 3/3, you're still kind of unhappy about
I think I would,
result.
at most play one of these.
Yeah,
in my deck.
I think so too.
I would give it a C-, Witness Protection. Like, it still just leaves it on the battlefield. It can still be interacted with. It can still be bounced and replayed. Like, there's just too much risk involved with these, to consider them real removal. But you can't ignore the effect they have on the game. They do. They play some big dragon. It does matter. How about a little chat? 1 and a blue for an instant at uncommon. It has Casualty 1. This is the first time we've seen Casualty, so I'll read the rules text. It says, as you cast this spell, you may sacrifice a creature with power 1 or greater. When you do, copy this spell. So they all are the same, Casualty and some number, and then you get to copy the spell if you can meet that requirement or if you choose to. This one says, look at the top 2 cards of your library, put one of them into your hand and the other on the bottom of your library.
So 2 mana to look at 2 and then put the best one in your hand is fine. I think you end up playing that card a decent amount of the time just because it helps mana fix you, especially if you're playing, a deck without tons of other 2-drops. And then getting to trade in a token or your worst creature for another thing, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
It's kind of like Village Rites, except it starts out by doing something.
Exactly. You can just cast this into empty board where before you couldn't, and you get a little bump there.
So I like a little chat. I would give it a C.
Yeah, I would too. I actually anticipate playing this card. Next is Backstreet Bruiser. This is 1 and a blue for a 3/3 Cephalid Rogue at common. It's got Defender. So 2 mana, 3/3 Defender. As long as there are 2 or more counters among creatures you control, Backstreet Bruiser can attack as though it didn't have Defender. So there's the blue-white thing again.
Yeah, where you're mostly going to play this as Defender, and then sometimes in these decks, it'll get to attack. These cards tend to play out pretty well, where it gets you something you want in like your blue-white Flyers style deck, and then sometimes, it starts to just crack in for 3 because it turns out you've got a shield counter and a +1/+1 counter.
And that's where I would look to it, by the way, is exactly what you said in blue-white Flyers. Yeah. I would give this card probably a D+. Like, Backstreet Bruiser, unless you really need to shield up, isn't the type of card that you tend to go for.
Yeah, I like D+ on the Bruiser.
Broker's Veteran is next. This is 1 and a blue for a human soldier. It's a 2/1 human soldier at common. And when it dies, put a shield counter on target creature you control.
This is a cool card. It's a little 2/1 that trades off, and then you get some value out when it leaves. I would basically always play this if I had enough creatures. You just don't want it to die on an empty board. So that's right. About it.
Would you give it a C? I mean, I'm a little lower on it than that. I would give it a D. I think this card's super mediocre. But where do you
give it a C? I think that you're gonna put this card in your deck and be happy with it.
Disdainful Stroke is back. This is 1 and a blue for an instant. It's common. It counters a spell with mana value 4 or greater. Cards that come to mind when I think about this are the cycle of land fixers. They all are Disdainful Strokeable.
Yeah. It is a card that typically lands in the D range and is a sideboard B at the same time, where like you definitely can main deck this card and it's fine. In fact, it's probably a little better in this set than average because the 3-color thing does slow things down a little bit.
Yep.
Makes counter spells better, but on balance, this is better out of your sideboard than it is in the main deck. Like, or if you're playing sealed, I would always main deck like multiple Disdainful Strokes in my sealed deck.
Yep. So somehow it gets the same grade at sideboard as it does regularly, which is like in the D range. Fairy Vandal is 1 and a blue for a 1/2 Fairy Rogue at uncommon. It's got flash and flying. And whenever you draw your second card each turn, put a +1/+1 counter on it.
So as we saw this show up in Eldraine, if you have a good way to enable this, then all you need is one counter and it goes pretty big. There's not that many ways to like do this every turn, but if you have a deck full of connive cards or ways to like inspiring overseers to draw extra cards, it doesn't take much for Fairy Vandal to kind of pop off. I like Fairy Vandal a lot. I would give it a B-.
Okay. Yeah, it's really a connive card. I mean, that's the bottom line. If you're conniving a bunch, then it gets up into the B range. If you're not and you're just hoping to randomly draw your card draw spell or whatever, then it's much more in the C range. Make Disappear is next. It's 1 and a blue for an instant at common. It has casualty 1 and counter target spell unless its controller pays 2.
So it starts out as a 2-mana counter on the early game because on turn 2 it's going to counter anything, and on turns 3, 4 it's probably going to be fine. And then in the late game, they're trying to make it not dead by letting you sack a creature to 2 for 1 yourself, kind of, but does counter their 5-drop when they have 7 lands.
Right.
I think if you need a 2-drop, I would just put this card in your deck.
It seems playable to me. Not exciting, but certainly playable. It's a C- to me.
I would give Make Disappear C-. I like that.
Security Bypass is next. It's 1 and a blue for an enchantment aura at common. It enchants a creature, and as long as the enchanted creature is attacking alone, it can't be blocked. And the enchanted creature has, whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player, it connives.
So it's kind of like one of those, curiosity type enchantments, but instead of drawing a card every turn, you get to loot every turn.
Yeah, that's not the same thing.
The upside is this does grow the creature,
yes,
but it also restricts you to only attacking with this creature if you want to get the unblockability out of it.
Yes.
I'm not in love with this whole package, I don't think.
I'm not either.
Like, clearly you can see how this can win you the game, right? When you put this on a 4/4 and they don't have an answer, they die in like a couple turns.
Mm-hmm.
But it looks like a D to me. It looks like it's going to get answered enough of the time, and it's not giving you a card back enough of the time.
Right. Also, connive doesn't mean that your creature grows. It means it can at the cost of you discarding spells from your hand, which is a very steep cost. So yeah, I'm on D for Security Bypass. What about Majestic Metamorphosis?
So this is 2 and a blue for an instant at common. Until end of turn, target artifact or creature becomes a 4/4 angel artifact creature and gains flying. Draw a card. So I think we can learn from Suit Up that this ability, adding draw a card to this ability really does get you there. They seem to like adding one of these like set power toughness setting cards to each set, or at least they have the last couple ones. There are some differences. You can't just port over exactly the rating on Suit Up because there aren't ninjas, there are fewer 1-mana 1/1s, that sort of thing. But I bet this card's going to be perfectly playable. It can act. The fact that it gives it flying is a nice angle because sometimes you'll use this to get the last 4 points of damage in. They don't have a flyer. You just cast this on your creature, and you can use it to ambush their flyers. So I like probably starting at C+ on Majestic Metamorphosis.
Yeah, let's see how much the ninja thing mattered for Suit Up. That's what we'll find out. If this ends up being a D, we'll know that it was really important. And if this type of card is just good in and of itself, then we'll know that by the end of the set. Next is Obscura Initiate. This is 2 and a blue for a 2/2 bird citizen with flying. It's common, and you can pay 1 and a white or 1 and a black to give it lifelink until end of turn.
I like it. I mean, it's a Windrake that once you run out of things to do, or if you're in a tight race, you just start giving it lifelink. Sounds great to me.
Yeah, so I like C for Obscura Initiate. I'm going to go higher. Psionic Snoop is next. This is 2 and a blue for a 0/3 human rogue at common. It's got flash, and when it ETBs, you connive. It connives.
Kind of funny, just like a flash 0/3, but it could be a 1/4, so you can ambush an X1.
Yeah.
It's fine. The problem is
it seems low power to me.
To get a creature out of this, you really need the counter, right? In order to make it like an actual game piece. And to get the counter, at some point, you're going to have to discard a spell instead of a land. And then that just kind of puts you down a card in the sense that like the land doesn't help you in some of those cases.
Right.
So I like D for Psionic Snoop.
I do too. That not just a little too low on power. Public Enemy. This is 2 and a blue for an enchantment or an uncommon. Enchant creature. All creatures attack enchanted creature's controller each combat if able. And when enchanted creature dies, draw a card.
So you put this on your own creature and it forces them to attack you.
Mm-hmm. And then you can trade it off and get a card back or something.
Or you have a 4/4 in play. You put this on your 1/1. They attack you with their 3/3. You block with the 4/4.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Or you just put it on the 4/4 for that case. You know?
What is the fail case? Like, what is let's say that you're behind on board. Does this do anything?
It does nothing with your behind on board except like draw you a card because your creature chumps or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Or they exile or bounce the creature that this is on. You don't even get your card out of it. So it looks pretty situational to me.
It looks
in the best case
horrendously bad to me.
In the best case scenario, if you have board advantage, this can really punish them, but that requires you to have board advantage. So yeah, this looks like an F to me.
I think it's an F. What about Rooftop Nuisance? What does it do?
One's good. This is 2 and a blue for a sorcery at common. It has casualty 1, so you can sack a one power creature or greater to copy the spell. It taps target creature and it doesn't untap, and you draw a card. So at base level, it's 3 mana sorcery to tap a creature and make it not untap and draw a card, which is a little less good than the instant speed version we've seen. But getting to cash in your worst creature to get 2 taps and 2 cards, plus this tap ability really scales up nicely. 2 will often have more of an impact on the board than double 1, because you're taking away 2 creatures for the whole turn cycle, which can really start to open up doors for like really good attacks, and or potentially keep them off your back entirely.
Man, but non-instant speed's really tough for a card like this, right? I mean, that's kind of the power of it.
Yeah, I think that you will want good things to sacrifice, like citizens, for example, to make this good. But if you can reliably sack to this, something that doesn't cost you a whole card, I think it is quite good.
Okay, because it's more of a divination with some upside rather than a chilling whatever.
Specifically, a divination that buys you a bunch of breathing room.
Yeah, which is kind of what you want when you just cast a card that didn't affect the board otherwise. Okay, so what do you want to give Rooftop Nuisance?
I mean, I'd still give it like a C, but
okay.
I think it's got some good potential.
Wingshield Agent is next. Is 2 and a blue for a 2/3 human soldier with at uncommon, and when it enters a battlefield, it enters a battlefield with a shield counter on it, and whenever it attacks, up to 1 other target creature gains flying until end of turn. So kind of interesting.
Yeah, you get a free attack in because even if they have a ground blocker that can kill this, it has the shield counter, so you can like send in your 4/2 twice to kill them. And it's also it's a 2/3 that gives flying when it attacks, and if they can't kill it, it's going to be pretty good at pushing damage through. So
right.
I like C+ for Wingshield Agent. Yeah. I think a 3 mana 2/3 shield's also just solid.
Yeah, seems reasonable. I think that too. Defensively even. Case the Joint is next. It's 3 and a blue for an instant at common. Draw 2 cards, then look at the top card of each player's library.
Pretty funny, but I would give it a C-. I don't know how often you can spend 4 mana to draw 2 here.
You'd rather just divination. Echo Inspector. This card's sweet. It's 3 and a blue for a 2/3 bird rogue at common. It's got flying, and when it enters the battlefield, it connives. Really simple design that kind of shows off what's going on. But I mean, geez, that's nice.
This is one where you really want the +1/+1 counter. You're going to end up feeling pretty good if this is a 3/4 flyer for 4. Mm-hmm. So keep that in mind. And it's a solid card. I'd probably go C+ on Echo Inspector. It's a card you're going to want every time you're blue.
Very good card. Out of the Way is next. Is 3 and a blue for an instant. It's uncommon. It costs 2 less to cast if it's targeting a green permanent. And it says, return target non-land permanent an opponent controls to its owner's hand, and you draw a card. So your worst case is 4 mana, bounce something, draw a card. And
this cycle's got a lot of cards you would just put in your deck.
Yeah, including this one.
Out of the Way, yep. I would give this probably a B.
Yeah.
Like 4 mana to bounce a thing and draw a card. I'm just interested in that at instant speed. And then sometimes it's going to cost 2 against green permanents. That's just amazing.
That's right. These type of cards normally give you a temporary tempo boost, but at the cost of card advantage. And this one's even money on cards, but you still get the temporary bonus. Run Out of Town is next. It's 3 and a blue for an instant. It's common. It says the owner of target non-land permanent puts it on the top or bottom of their library. That's
4 mana to get something out of the way for a turn. They get to choose where it goes, of course. And, it is a 1-for-1 because they're skipping their draw if they put it on top, or it's just gone if they put it on the bottom.
Mm-hmm.
Happy enough to play this card.
I would too.
I would give it a C. Just put Run Out of Town in your deck and
this
get
is
some good value.
Yeah, this is on the upper end of blue removal. Sleep with the Fishes. Man, they just went so. We just did Run Out of Town, Case the Joint, and Sleep with the Fishes.
I just love the freedom that they've taken to like go beyond action words for names of spells.
Yes.
Like it used to be every spell name was like, smash,
fall
or
to the
counter
ground.
spell.
Yeah.
Yeah. And now it's like, Sleep with the Fishes or Case the Joint is a lot cooler name, or like, a little chat.
A little chat. Yeah. So Sleep with the Fishes is 2 blue for an enchantment aura at uncommon, and it enchants a creature. And it says, when Sleep with the Fishes enters the battlefield, tap enchanted creature and you create a 1/1 blue fish token that can't be blocked. Enchanted creature does not untap during its controller's untap step.
Oh, this is great. This is kind of like a Flame Tongue Cobra or Ravenous Chupacabra. It's just.
Is that what it's like? Okay. You get a 1/1.
Well, you get a 1/1. It's a little smaller, but it does kill a creature and you get a 1/1.
Yes. And it is a 1/1 unblockable. It actually is a relevant creature. Like that is not nothing.
I like B for Sleep with the Fishes.
I do too.
This is premium removal.
It actually is. It's a straight up 2-for-1. The 1/1 unblockable fish is close enough to a card. And of course, you're taking out their best thing. So B with Sleep with the Fishes. Nice card. Psychic Pickpocket is 4 and a blue for a 3/2 Cephalid Rogue at uncommon. When it enters the battlefield, it connives. When it connives this way, return up to 1 target non-land permanent to its owner's hand. Ooh.
So worth noting, you don't have to discard a non-land to get the bounce. It'll bounce no matter what.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Now, what is when it connives this way? Is that only on the ETB connive? Is that
yes,
what that's
it's only
saying?
on the ETB because there are some cards that make things connive, and this doesn't get to just go nuts bouncing.
Damn. Okay. I'm a little sad, but as sad as I am, I'm really happy because this card's awesome. 5 mana, 3/2 mana war that loots. Like you're combining some of my absolute all-timers, right? Like I get to bounce something and loot in the same card, and it's on a body too, because that's what I really like is when it's a creature. I'm in love. Psychic Pickpocket's going to be, that's on short list for Marshall's card for sure for the Sunset Show for this one.
All right. Well, I'll let you grade it then.
I would give it a B.
Yeah, I like B for this. That seems reasonable. I was surprised you restrained yourself.
I did. I really did. I'm like, I got to keep it real for the listeners.
Wow. So this is a pretty good, like premium blue uncommon. And it's worse than the white comment that Inspiring Overseer. Just
FYI. Sewer Crocodiles are our last blue card. It's 5 and a blue for a 4/6 crocodile at common. And it has the activated ability 3 and a blue. It can't be blocked this turn, but it costs 3 less if you have the 5 different mana values in your graveyard. It can just be activated for blue. But the truth is, that was never the reason that we're not super excited about these type of cards. It wasn't the cost of making it unblockable. It's just that they just don't do enough in conjunction with with the stuff that they're up against. For example, you could play Sewer Crocodile, okay, or you could play whichever family you're in. You could play the mana fixer for it that'll cost you 4 or 5, or 5 or 6, or maybe 7 mana. But you're going to get a lot more utility out of that common than this one. And that's why Sewer Crocodile ends up being a D almost all the time.
Yeah, I like D for Sewer Crocodile.
All right, let's move to black, where we've got Cutthroat Contender. This is black for a 1/1 Vampire Warrior at common. And you can pay a life to have it get +1/+0 until end of turn, once each turn.
I like this as a 1-drop. It's a 2/1 where it matters, which is combat with other creatures. And if you're hitting them, you can pay a life to make you both lose a life effectively. So that's a reasonable 1-drop. I would give it Cutthroat Contender a C-. Okay. Just happy to put this card in my deck.
Okay. Yeah, C- for Cutthroat Contender. Grisly Sigil is next. It's black for a sorcery. It's uncommon. It has casualty 1. And it says choose target creature or planeswalker. If it was dealt non-combat damage this turn, Grisly Sigil deals 3 damage to it and you gain 3 life. Otherwise, it deals 1 damage to it and you gain 1 life. This is very much a card that is meant to be casualtied, right? If you just cast this, it just pings something for 1. And that's rarely going to be enough to affect the board in the way you want. But if you do casualty it, it counts itself. The copy will then see that it was dealt non-combat damage by the original, or maybe that's reversed, but whatever, by the other one. And then you end up, doing 4 and draining for 4 here. So that ends up being for 1 mana, by the way, which is really great.
1 mana, but you have to sack a creature.
You do have to sack a creature. In this case, it's almost any creature. It's casualty 1, so 1 power. But yes, you do.
I would play this in a sacrifice deck, but I'm not really too excited to play it outside of that. So I would give Grizzly Sigil probably a D.
Man, I think I would play it even not.
It's a sorcery that you can sack a creature to kill a creature. It's like a Bone Splinters kind of.
Yeah, that's true. And it's not even because it's only 4. Like if it's a 5/5, you don't get that. Yeah. Okay. I'm with you. Let's put it into context of being in the sacrifice deck. Corrupt Court Official, 1 and a black for a 1/1 human advisor at common. When it enters the battlefield, target opponent discards a card.
Love it.
Yeah.
Virus Beetle had ninjas as part of the reason it was good, and artifact sack. This has the black-red sack, but also just casualty in general. So
yes,
I'm in for a Corrupt Court Official. It's probably going to be like a C+.
Absolutely. You're going to see these things get sacrificed all the time. Crooked Custodian is next. It's 1 and a black for a 3/2 Ogre Rogue at common. It enters the battlefield tapped.
Yeah, there's times when that is going to cost you, but a 2 mana 3/2 is a fine, little game piece. So
yeah,
C- on Crooked Custodian.
Yeah, I agree. C-. That's like, I like how you put that. Fine little game piece. Extract the Truth is next. It's 1 and a black for a sorcery at common. It says choose 1. Target opponent reveals their hand. You may choose a creature, enchantment, or planeswalker card from it. That player discards that card. Or target opponent sacrifices an enchantment. Can't imagine the enchantment thing being huge here. So even though creature is the card type that you'd most like to hit in limited with a card like Extract the Truth, I don't think I'd want to play it still.
Problem is, if you draw this card in the mid to late game, it might not do that much. Mm-hmm. And then the enchantment mode doesn't really help save that. So I like D for Extract the Truth.
I do too. Fake Your Own Death. 1 and a black, a time-honored tradition in Capenna. 1 and a black for an instant at common. Until end of turn, target creature gets +2/+0 and gains. When this creature dies, return it to the battlefield tapped under its owner's control, and you create a treasure token.
I like this card.
+2/+0 is a lot.
Yeah, and the treasure part I think is actually relevant here. So I like this a lot more than you typically would like these cards. Which is to say, I think it's probably around a C-. Mm-hmm. But it's a card I think you'll put in your deck, and especially since it looks like there's a lot of good death or ETB, value creatures. And Fake Your Own Death works really nicely with those.
It's also just a pump spell. Like, you just get your opponent for 2 more damage, and who cares about the thing dying? Not really what it's for, but you could do it. Incriminate is next. It's 1 and a white. It's 1 and a black for a sorcery at common. It says choose 2 target creatures controlled by the same player. That player sacrifices one of them.
So you get to make them sack one of their 2 best creatures.
Yes. I trust them to make a very good decision every time about which one. This reminds me of that Joker scene where he breaks the pool cue in half and says you guys figure out who gets to be on my team or whatever.
Yeah.
It's pretty brutal. This card seems awful to me.
Yeah, the odds that their second best creature is so much worse than their best creature so much of the time.
Yes.
So it's cute that it gets around tokens, but I think I'll pass on incriminating myself.
I think so too. I would give it an F, actually. I just don't think we're going to play this card ever.
Yeah, I agree.
Tavern Swindlers next. It's 1 and a black for a 2/2 human rogue at uncommon. You can tap it and pay 3 life to flip a coin. Oh, I like where this is going. If you win the flip, you gain 6 life. Is this a reprint? Is this the exact card from before?
Yep, this is exactly from Return to Ravnica or what have you.
All right, yeah. I liked that card there, but there was a lot more payoffs for gaining life and upside. I don't know if that's the case here.
No, not so much. It's a card that can add some variance, some spice to your life, but for the most part, the ability is not going to be that relevant.
It's basically tap, do nothing, but it makes it exciting.
It's a little bit more than that, where it can tap to add variance, where if it's a game you're losing, this gives you more of an opportunity to win. If you're going to lose anyway, you might as well activate this, because if you win 2 coin flips, all of a sudden you're up 6 life, and maybe you'll end up, winning that game. So
That's true.
I would say D for Tavern Swindler because it's a 2-mana 2/2 with minor upside.
The flavor text says only a chump stops after one unlucky toss or loss. You're not a chump, are you? Dang. Yeah. Next is Dig Up the Body. This is 2 and a black for an instant. At common, it has casualty 1, and you mill 2 cards. Then you may return a creature card from your graveyard to your hand.
I like Dig Up the Body a lot. Just getting to cast this and then sack a Corrupt Court official to copy it and get back multiple things. Like, note that you can get back the creature you sacrifice, so it's in some ways kind of free-ish, because what happens is you cast this, you sack a creature, and then they start resolving. It's not targeted. You mill 2, then choose. So if you have a creature with ETB ability, this automatically returns it to your hand. Or if you flip something better on the mill, you can just do that instead. So it's kind of free-ish. Obviously, it takes creature off the board, but I like Dig Up the Body. I think that you're going to be looking for these in some of your black decks, like pretty specifically, which makes me want to give it a C+, but I'm going to give it a C.
Okay, well, you're going to be responsible and give Dig Up the Body a C. Maestro's Initiate is next. This is 2 and a black for a 3/1 human citizen at common, and you can pay 4 and a blue or 4 and a red and exile it from your graveyard to draw 2 cards and then discard a card.
So this is
it's a lot of mana.
Part of the hybrid cycle. I like this more than most because this lets you just trade it off, and then at some point later you can use it. It's not like the 0/4. Imagine if the 0/4 let you exile it from the graveyard to make a 5/5. That'd be a very different animal.
Right.
This, you kind of just, it's a 3-mana 3/1 that gives you upside later. It's a good thing to sacrifice. It's a good thing to just to self-mill. So I actually kind of like the Maestro's Initiate.
Okay. I think I'm pretty low on it. I don't know. It's a citizen. Does that matter? Probably not. What would you give it? C-?
C- on the Initiate, yeah.
Okay, I'm with you. Midnight Assassin. It's a nice little defensive card. 2 and a black for a 1/2 flying death touch vampire assassin at common.
Solid little way to trade off here. Good blocker. Not much else to say. I mean, it kills creature non-flyers or flyers alike. So I would give it a C. It's
a removal spell that your opponent can interact with. And I would also give it a C. Speaking of removal spells, how about that you knew this was going to be in the set? Murder. 1 black for an instant. It is common, and it says destroy target creature. Awesome.
So just straight up common 3-mana, destroy target creature. Double color, of course, is a little tricky in a 3-color set. Clearly the card is good. How good it's going to be? I think it's going to be like C+ to B- range. Probably I'd start at B-.
Yeah, that's where I'd go too. It's generally really, really good for its efficiency. Nightclubber is next. This is 1 black for a 2/2 human warrior at uncommon, and when it enters the battlefield, creatures your opponents control get -1/-1 until end of turn. That's already pretty good. But then it has our first instance of Blitz. So it has an alternate cost called Blitz, which is in this case 2 and a black. And this is what Blitz does. It says if you cast this spell for its Blitz cost, it gains haste. And when this creature dies, draw a card. Sacrifice it at the beginning of the next end step. Kind of turns it into a sorcery that replaces itself. It's really strong.
Yeah, because Blitz gets you the card even if it dies in combat. So either whether it dies end of turn or in combat, you get that card. You're not really paying a card cost to use Blitz, and you're still getting the ETB, of course. So Nightclubber is good. It's going to be really savage against all the token decks, and just out of nowhere getting to Blitz them with this or just cast it, you're going to be pretty happy. So I would give probably a B on Nightclubber.
I would too, yeah. And I mean, if you can hit anything with it and get the card back, that's already good too. So B for Nightclubber. Next is Rafine's Silencer. This is 2 and a black for a 1/1 human assassin. It's uncommon. When it enters the battlefield, it connives. And when Rafine's Silencer dies, target creature an opponent controls gets -X/-X until end of turn, where X is Rafine Silencer's power. Another card that's kind of leaning you towards conniving away spells to pump it.
A lot better as a 2/2.
Right, exactly. That's a huge threshold bump, and then it does get better the bigger it gets, but that's really a big difference. Like you're going to be able to kill, even sometimes up to like 4-mana creatures with it, whereas a 1/1, it really only kills like 1 or sometimes 2-mana creatures. So Still, it seems really good. I mean, anything that ETBs and connives, I'm already kind of interested in. But the fact that I really feel compelled to discard a non-land card to it does actually bring me down a little bit. I mean, I have the choice, but if I don't, it's a 3-mana 1/1 that dies and maybe takes something out. That's like not quite as exciting. I still think it's good, though.
I think it's good either way, but you are pressured to discard a non-land. I would give it a B. I mean, it's going to often give you a little filtering and then either 2-for-1 or trade up. Both those are okay.
So B for Rafine Silencer. Next is Rogue's Gallery. This is 2 and a black for a sorcery at uncommon. For each color, return up to 1 target creature card of that color from your graveyard to your hand.
So the joke here is it's a draw 3 because you're playing a 3-color deck and you get 1 creature of each color.
Okay. And you could go off, right? Like in some weird scenario and get 5.
Yeah, I mean it's possible if you're like splashing some of the mana fixing cycle, right? that maybe you use that you get to get an off-color creature back. Overall, I think Rogue's Gallery is solid. It's not too hard to get 2 creatures back, and it's not impossible to get 3. That looks like a C+ to me.
Yeah, me too. That is card advantage in a grindy deck. Next is Deal Gone Bad. This is 3 and a black for an instant at common. Target creature gets -3/-3 until end of turn. Target player mills 3 cards.
Yeah, you're mostly going to mill yourself because there's a lot of incentives for that.
Yeah.
And 4 mana to give a creature -3/-3 is okay. So C for Deal Gone Bad.
Yeah, and definitely going to mill yourself a lot. Demon's Due is 3 and a black for an instant. It's common. It says scry 2, then draw 2 cards. You lose 2 life.
Decent 4 mana draw spell, but again, I'm a little skeptical that you can spend too much time doing this. So especially at the loss of 2 life, I would give C- to Demon's Due.
Yeah, the one thing that I do like about these is that I am interested in just raw cards going into my hand because there's a lot of conniving happening, which is fine, but doesn't really get you ahead. But if you can get a couple of extra cards, and conniving can get even better. But yeah, C- for Demon's Due. Revel Ruiner is next. It's 3 and a black. For a Cephalid Rogue, it's a 3/1. It's got Menace, it's common, and when it enters the battlefield, it connives. Nice.
This is okay. I mean, a 4/2 and a 3/1 are both kind of flimsy, but Menace obviously helps, makes them double block.
Mm-hmm.
I think that this is like pretty classic C-. Like you'll put this in your deck, it'll be okay.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, the connive thing is, there's a lot of it around here, as you probably have noticed. Whack is next. It's 3 and a black for a sorcery. It is uncommon. It costs 3 less to cast if it targets a white creature, and the creature gets -4/-4 until end of turn.
Yeah, this had to be a sorcery. I think it'd be a little bit too good otherwise, but I would again always put this card in my deck because 4 mana to kill a creature at sorcery speed is fine, and then sometimes you just run into someone where you get to pay 1 mana and just have this beautiful turn 4. So
why couldn't they have made this an instant?
I just think it would have been kind of a little weird next to Deal Gone Bad as instant speed, and also maybe for constructed, it might have been a little bit too much.
Oh, okay. I was going to say because murder's like kind of better, but okay. Yeah. So what do you want to give it? Like a C+?
Probably a C+ for Whack, yeah.
Yeah, it's a good card. Girder Goons is next. It's 4 and a black for a 4/4 Ogre Warrior at common. When it dies, create a tapped 2/2 black rogue creature token, and Girder Goons has Blitz for 3 and a black. Man, so it's nice.
Pretty good amount of value here, and I kind of like the blitz here, where you're just like spending 4 mana to like nug them for 4, and then get a 2/2. It's a good sack card. It triggers sacrifice. It triggers your sacrifice stuff when you blitz in, and gives you maybe good fodder either way. I would give Guragoons a C. Pretty good feeling just to tap out for this, right?
Definitely, and I think it's trending towards C+ as well. Graveyard Shift is next. This great name. It's 4 and a black for a sorcery at uncommon. This spell has flash as long as there are 5 or more mana values among cards in your graveyard, and it returns a creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield.
Just okay. I'm not. There's a lot of graveyard stuff in this set in terms of like there's Deal Gone Bad, there's Rogue's Gallery and Graveyard Shift, and this looks like the worst of them. So I would probably do like a D for Graveyard Shift.
Yeah, I would bump it up. I would give it a build around like C plus B minus, because if you're in the self-mill deck, you're going to be able to A, have more targets, and B, hit that threshold thing a lot more. And then it's actually quite good. Like you can ambush something, gets back any creature. You know, it could be a 7-drop or whatever if you milled it. Illicit Shipment is next. This is 3 black for a sorcery. It's uncommon. It has casualty 3. So if you want to casualty this, you got to sack a creature with 3 power or greater. Search your library for a card, put it in your hand, and shuffle. And the benefit being there, of course, is that you can go for two things.
I'm just going to give this an F. I just don't think you should put this card in your deck.
Even if you get 2.
You're paying 5 mana and sacking a 3 power creature to go get 2 cards.
Oh, at sorcery speed, by the way.
Yeah, at sorcery speed. You're just completely tapping out and getting behind on board to Demonic Tutor twice for cards that you still have to pay for.
Yes. We'll move on. Illicit Shipment gets an F. Join the Maestros is next. This is 4 and a black for a sorcery. It's common. It has casualty 2. And it makes a 4/3 black ogre warrior creature token.
So this isn't good unless you can reliably casualty it, at which point you're spending 5 mana for 2 4/3s and you had to sack something decent, casualty 2. I kind of like it in a sack deck or in a deck that reliably can put some like 2 power creatures into play, but casualty 2 and casualty 1 are a huge difference. So
they are.
Well, I guess as you mostly don't play this card.
I think so
Looks
too.
Like a D.
Yeah, I just feel so nervous about playing casualty. At least this thing gets you back on board, right? It's not like the card we just looked at. Next is Vampire Scrivener, and this is 4 and a black for a 2/2 Vampire Warlock at uncommon. It's got flying, and this is kind of cool. Whenever you gain life during your turn, it gets a +1/+1 counter, and whenever you lose life during your turn, it gets a +1/+1 counter.
So it's got a little bit of a life gain payoff, and then also when it's during your turn, so when you're paying life for effects.
Exactly.
Paying a life to draw a card or paying 2 life or something.
Right.
You need to grow this pretty nicely to have it be good enough, and the fact that it doesn't help either of those things makes me a little wary. I'm guessing this is like a build around B, but
yes,
unless you have reliable ways to do both these things, ideally multiple times a turn, it's just going to take too long before this becomes like the 5/5 you really need it to be to feel paid off.
Yeah, 4/4 is acceptable. 5/5 is getting into good. 3/3 is not there. Build around B for Vampire Scrivener. Yeah, get your lifelinking flyers ready. Dusk Mangler is our last black card. It's 5 black for a 5/4 horror, and it is uncommon. As an additional cost to cast this spell, sacrifice a creature, discard a card, or pay 4 life. When Dusk Mangler enters the battlefield, each opponent sacrifices a creature, discards a card, and loses 4 life.
So sweet.
We only have to do one of these things, but they have to do all 3.
Yeah, and you get to choose the one that obviously costs you the least. If you're at a high life total, you just pay the life, get extra land in hand, you can discard, etc.
Dang, also, that's nice.
If you reanimate this, you don't need to, if you graveyard shift this into play, then you don't need to do all that.
Yeah.
Sacking a creature, discarding a card, and losing 4 life, that's a real trigger. So
that's huge.
I kind of like B- on Dusk Mangler. I feel like this is going to be a kind of nice payoff at the top.
I like it too. Yeah, that's a sweet one. I'll go B. Let's just go B on Dusk Mangler. Give me my 7 mana thing. Okay, that brings us to red. Our first card is Darien Escape. This is red for an instant at common. Target creature gets +1/+0 and gains first strike until end of turn, and you scry 1.
I'm going to bucket in at kind of like around a D, for like most combat tricks here.
Yep, these are playable, but not great. Gold Hound is next. This is red for a 1/1 artifact creature, Treasure Dog, and it's common. It has first strike and menace, and it has tap, sacrifice it, add 1 mana of any color.
So it's basically a treasure.
It's a treasure. It is.
1 mana, first strike, menace. That's kind of cute, and you can sack it for a treasure later. I bet this actually plays pretty well. I bet it plays like a C.
This is the type of card we may have dismissed in prior years and won't this time, just in case. Sticky Fingers is red for an enchantment aura at common. Enchants a creature, and enchanted creature has menace, and whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player, create a treasure token, and when the enchanted creature dies, you draw a card.
This is good on a 1-drop. Like you start making treasures right away, and then if they kill your thing, you at least get your card back.
Yeah,
I bet Sticky Fingers is actually good. You know, there's a little some kind of like maniac 1-drop aggro here that Sticky Fingers kind of enables. It's probably close to a D overall, but there will be times when it actually has a good effect on the game.
Put it on your Goldhound.
Oh yeah.
What about Strangle?
This is red for a sorcery at common, and it deals 3 damage to target creature, planeswalker. So
nice
efficient removal. Looking like a B- to me in terms of where it fits in. But I like Strangle. It's a good efficient card.
Trade up big on your mana there. Torch Breath.
This is X in a red instant uncommon. It can't be countered and deals X damage to target creature or planeswalker, but it also costs 2 less to cast if it targets a blue permanent. So it's 1 mana. It just starts at 2 damage for blue. You can spend 1 to deal 2 damage to a blue permanent, or you can spend red X deal X damage to a non-blue permanent. At instant speed, I like this at B- as well. Like it's just a good efficient card, and sometimes it's not super efficient, but it kills most things you need for like 3 or 4 mana. And then it can scale up. But then against blue, you spend 1 mana to 2 mana to kill most of the things you need.
That's really that's the thing that makes this card good, because otherwise you're just kind of mana inefficient. But there's going to be the overlapping blue cards that you just get kind of free rolled. What grade do you want to give it?
I would give it a B. I think it's a good removal spell.
Unlucky Witness is red for a 1/1 human citizen. It's uncommon. When it dies, exile the top 2 cards of your library until your next end step. You may play one of those cards.
I like this. This is a nice little sacrifice, enabler where you play this, you use it to cast Casualty or Chump or something like that, and then you get a card out of it. It's a 1 mana 1/1 that when it's close to when it dies, draw a card, and that's a card I think a lot of decks would want here. So I would give C+ to Unlucky Witness.
Supreme fodder here. Antagonize is next. This is 1 in a red for an instant. It's common. Target creature gets +4/+3 until end of turn.
Yeah, solid stats, but still kind of like in the D+ range.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's still big for sure, but yeah. Jackhammer. This is 1 in a red for an artifact equipment at common. Equip creature gets +2/+0, and the equip cost is 2. Very simple card.
I would basically look to play this if you had a lot of ways to make little creatures or some good payoffs for increasing a creature's power. But in your average deck, I don't think it gives you enough stats at the cost to really be worth equipping this on your like random 3 drops. So that kind of leaves Jackhammer at like a D for me, but it's got some utility.
Okay, but in the situations where you have a bunch of small creatures or easy, stuff that makes that +2/+0 better, like flying, lifelink, whatever, then it gets better. Light 'em up. This is 1 in a red for a sorcery. It's common. It has Casualty 2, and Light 'em up deals 2 damage to target creature or planeswalker.
Solid little removal spell that you can copy. Casualty 2 does mean you have to sack a real creature, which takes a lot away from this. I would give it a much higher grade at Casualty 1. I think there's a big difference between those two numbers. Mm-hmm. But even then, at sorcery speed, 2 mana for 2 damage, kind of like a C- level for me.
Yeah, it's also worth noting that the copy on this one's has a much higher upside as you can kill 2 separate things, right?
True.
So that's pretty cool too. Good burn spell. Mayhem Patrol is next. This is 1 in a red for a 1/2 Devil Warrior at common. It's got Menace, and whenever it attacks, target creature gets +1/+0 until end of turn, and it has Blitz for 1 in a red.
This is a good aggressive card. It's a 2 mana 2/2 Menace when it attacks.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. Mm-hmm. And then Blitz gives it some nice utility on the side. So plus you can also pump something else if that becomes better at a certain time. So yeah, I like C for Mayhem Patrol. Kind of checks all the boxes.
I think so too. This is the type of card that we were missing in the last set for the aggro decks at 2. Riveteer's Initiate is next. It's 1 in a red for a 2/2 Viashino Citizen common, and you can pay 1 in a black or 1 in a green to have it get Death Touch until end of turn.
It's mostly a 2 mana 2/2, and it'll trade up when needed. So
yeah, pretty unexciting.
C- for Riveteer's Initiate.
Yeah, definitely. Riveteer's Requisitioner. It's a mouthful. 1 in a red for a 3/1 Viashino Rogue at uncommon. When it dies, create a treasure token, and you can blitz it for 2 in a red. Nice.
Really nice. Just 2 mana 3/1 dies into treasure is awesome. And then if you draw it later, you need the treasure right away. or you don't really care for it, a 3/1, you just blitz it and you get some value as well. So C+ for Riveteer's Requisitioner.
Yeah, very nice. Rob the Archives. This is 1 and a red for a sorcery at uncommon. It's got Casualty 1, and it says exile the top 2 cards of your library. You may play those cards this turn.
This isn't really a good card to copy all that well. Like, you're already going to run into trouble playing 2 of these cards. Now you're exiling 4, and it's not till the next turn. It's this turn.
Oh, yeah, that's tough.
So I would play this card as like a kind of bad reckless impulse in a low curve deck because, again, it's just this turn. But Casualty really doesn't add a whole lot to it. So I would give it a D, actually. I think that the fact that you have to wait till you have lots of mana to play this really takes away from it.
Is it fine? Like, if I erased Casualty off of it entirely, would you see it much worse? Like, exile top 2 cards library, you may play those cards this turn. Like, okay, I want to hit my land drop.
Part is all that that important.
But that was a card we had, right?
Well, that was until end of next turn.
I see. So that's the difference. Okay.
The difference is Reckless Impulse you can cast on turn 3 without playing a land, and then play a land, and then next turn play another land or play whatever spell you hit.
Yeah.
If you play this, you might just get nothing or 1 land, and that's it.
And then they're like, but wait, you can have more.
Yeah, exactly.
Call in a Professional is next. It's 2 and a red for an instant and uncommon. Players can't gain life this turn. Damage can't be prevented this turn. Call in a Professional deals 3 damage to any target.
This was the show when you had TBS on instead of me. It does note, even in the reminder text here, that this makes them remove a shield counter, but it doesn't prevent the damage. It gets around shield counters. That's the whole joke.
Oh, okay.
And 3 mana, instant speed, deal 3. Yeah, I'm in for that. That's a B.
Okay, yeah. B, instant speed too. Nice. What about Exhibition Magician?
This 2 and a red for a 2/1 human wizard at common. When it enters the battlefield, you either create a green-white citizen token, a 1/1, or create a treasure token. So pretty nice. It gives you a sack outlet or a sack fodder in a citizen, or a treasure if you need to fix your mana. And it's a 3 mana 2/1. So I like this at C+. I think Exhibition Magician is really good.
Yeah, you know what I see here is 2 sacrifices, right? I mean, that's great. Yeah, this card's really good.
Or just your 3rd color if you're playing a 3-color deck, you know?
Yeah, treasure tokens are great. Glittering Stockpile is next. This is 2 and a red for an artifact treasure, but it's red. It's uncommon, and you can tap it to add red and put a stash counter on Glittering Stockpile. You can tap it and sacrifice it to add X mana of any 1 color, where X is the number of stash counters on it.
So basically, it's a mana rock that at some point you can then sack it to add 3 or 4 mana if you need a one-time burst.
It's weird that it's a treasure, but it's not a treasure, right?
Yeah, treasure just kind of is
like when I see that, I think, okay, I can sacrifice it for a mana, but I can't exactly.
You can pretty quickly, but yeah.
Yeah,
it is
yeah.
weird.
Okay.
I don't think most decks are going to be that interested in this, because a 3 mana rock that already even takes red to cast is not super exciting. And then, yes, 3 or 4 turns later, you can get a mana burst out of this, but that's not, I don't know, doesn't seem like the most important thing in the world. So I would probably give this a D. I think there's some decks you could construct that like can make use of this nicely, but I don't think Glittering Stockpile is going to be that played.
Right. It does satisfy the if you paid with treasure requirement, right?
True, but it can't even cast the guy you want because you can't add multiple colors.
Yeah. Okay. Pyre Sledge Arsonist is next. It's 2 and a red for a 2/2 Viashino Shaman. This is an uncommon. You can pay 1 and tap it, and it does X damage to any target where X is the number of permanents you've sacrificed this turn. Oh man!
And he doesn't sacrifice this guy, so
no.
You just sit there and ping. Like if you sack a treasure, you can ping for 1. If you sack a treasure and something else, just ping something for 2. So a really annoying card to have in play. In red green, you've got treasures, and red black, you've got sack. So especially in Riveteers and the red, blue, green, black, I assume Pyre Sledge Arsonist is like firing on all cylinders. So I'd give it a build around B. It's going to be really good in a sack deck.
And it's just unplayable outside, right?
Yeah, not particularly great.
It's a 3 mana.
If you make a lot of treasure, you're not a sack deck, I guess. But if you can make a lot of treasure, I'd play this too.
Okay, but I mean, like you have to support you just have to support this card, or you can't put it in your deck. Witty Roastmaster is next. This is 2 and a red for a 3/2 Devil Citizen, and it's common. And it's got Alliance. Whenever another creature enters battlefield under your control, it deals 1 damage to each opponent.
I consider myself something of a witty roast master. Indeed.
I was going to say you're more of a devil citizen, but okay.
Well, I have I paid my taxes, so.
Oh, I know.
I guess devils would be kind of into taxes. That like if you had to choose who runs the IRS, devils are actually like very accurate, like lawful evil. Like bury you in the rules, but also ultimately, not for the forces of good.
Yeah, there you go.
Anyways, Witty Roastmaster is mostly a 3/2 that's going to ping your opponent for 1 a turn, and if you're making tokens, sometimes more. Pretty mediocre and replaceable, kind of like a D+.
It looks like a D+ here. Big Score. This is the 3 and a red instant. It's common. As an additional cost to cast it, you discard a card, but then you draw 2 and get 2 treasures.
It's funny because Unexpected Windfall is the same card for 2 red, and seeing lots of constructed play. So this is actually a meaningful upgrade in constructed. Mm-hmm. But in limited, it's a little better here than Windfall was because this is such a 3-color focused format where Big Score can really help cast some of the things you're looking for. So I would give it a C-. I think you're going to play this a little more often than you were in for Windfall.
Yeah, and then of course with sack and treasure stuff, it's more relevant. Involuntary employment, fun way to put it. 3 and a red for a sorcery at uncommon. Gain control of target creature until end of turn. Untap that creature. It gains haste until end of turn. Create a treasure token.
So sad that the threaten's uncommon. They just
they do
take away a lot from the sack deck. Though this is a powerful threat, and getting a treasure at the end of it is really good. So I think that this card is going to be solid if you have enough casualty cards and stuff, because it also makes the treasure so you can pay right away to like play this and play a card with casualty in the same turn. It's going to be one of the good combos that you want. And then of course there's other sack outlets too. As usual, you just don't want to put these cards in your deck unless you can sacrifice the creature reliably. They're just not good enough otherwise.
Yes, and that makes it very difficult because of how expensive it is. You get the 1 mana rebate, but you really want to fire off a casualty spell after this and just get the full value. That would be where you want to be. But if that's the case, it's a build around, right? And it does get there, though. Involuntary employment is probably like a build around B for that deck.
Yeah. Exactly, like build around B for involuntary employment.
Plasma Jockey's 3 and a red for a 3/1 Viashino Warrior at common. Whenever it attacks, target creature an opponent controls can't block this turn, and it has Blitz for 2 and a red. Man, that's a nice Blitz.
I mean, Goblin Heel Cutter was a beating.
That was one of the best cards in the set, yeah.
And that had, instead of Blitz Dash, where you don't sack it and you don't draw a card, which is probably a little better than Blitz on this card, but still, when you cast this on turn 4, your opponent, if they can't kill it, they're going to take a lot of damage next turn. And then blitzing this out of nowhere is going to be huge for aggressive decks.
I wouldn't be surprised if this gets blitzed a lot more often than not.
Just to guarantee, basically, you get the trigger.
Right. You get a trigger, you get a card back, you get in for the damage from this, plus everything else, that could get through their now 1 blocker down board. It's a huge swing. I mean, that's a scary card. And then, you're set up for the next turn because you get to draw a card off of it at the end step too.
I like C for Plasma Jockey, but make sure you're aggressive. Very good in that
definitely
case.
Sizzling Soloist. This is 3 and a red for a 3/2 human citizen at uncommon. It has Alliance. Whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, target creature an opponent controls can't block this turn. If this is the second time this ability has resolved this turn, that creature attacks during its controller's next combat phase of Fable. Wow, that's a lot. Like, if you can pop off and make it so like 2 of their guys can't block and one of them must be sent over to its doom, or even just to make it so it can't block the next turn as it's tapped, that's pretty good. Like, you're kind of doing it. In the meantime, you have to pay a 4 mana 3/2, which isn't great.
This is a good aggressive card. So this is, I think, probably still a C like Plasma Jockey, but the upside is higher because if you can combine this with tokens or just a very creature heavy deck with lots of cheap creatures, getting multiple triggers can be really good.
Devastating. Yeah. C for Sizzling Soloist.
Wait, hold on.
Yeah.
I see. Okay. Yes. You do get the full can't block It's not instead. It's both. You're right.
Oh, it is both. Oh, actually, I didn't think target creature.
So the first time you play a creature can't block.
Yep.
The second time you play a creature, you target their creature, it can't block, and it attacks.
It must attack. Yeah, that's great. Especially because in aggressive decks, that's what you want to be playing out more creatures anyway. I always forget how to say the second word on this, but it's pugnacious pugilist. How do you say it?
Pugilist. Yeah,
Pugilist.
You got it right.
3 red for a 4/4 ogre warrior. Whenever it attacks, create a tapped and attacking 1/1 red devil creature token with, when this creature dies, it deals 1 damage to any target, and this thing has blitz for 3 in a red? Yikes.
This is one I do want to cast because getting multiple triggers is pretty impressive.
And it's just
but
big,
even then,
yeah.
Blitzing it in the late game is going to be really good. And getting 1/1 devils is really nice for all the value you're looking to create with sacrifice stuff, or just the fact that they're a 1/1 that dies and kills something. So I like B-, I think, for Pugnacious Pugilist. It's a beater, though.
Definitely. And the flexibility with the blitz is nice. Ready to Rumble. This is 4 and a red for a sorcery. It's common. Choose one. Ready to Rumble deals 5 damage to target creature or planeswalker, or you can destroy an artifact.
Mostly just deal 5. The artifact thing won't happen too often. At sorcery speed for 5 mana, looks like a D+.
D, yeah. Wrecking Crew. This is 4 and a red for a 4/5 human warrior at common. It has reach, which is kind of scary on a red card, and trample.
Yeah, you're never getting both abilities at once. 5 mana, 4/5, man, pretty replaceable. Probably a D on this one as well.
Yeah, I don't know, man. That's still like reach on a 4/5 does stabilize you. Like,
yeah, that's true.
I would probably give it a C, and then I'll take the trample, but I'm not. That's kind of. I guess
it's a C because defensive decks will be happy with it. It's just not that exciting for an aggressive deck.
Right.
Reach is definitely the better of the 2 abilities.
Definitely. All right, that moves us to green. Our first card is Cabaretti Initiate. This is green for a 1/2 raccoon citizen at common, and it has an activated ability. You can pay 2 in a red or 2 in a white to give it double strike until end of turn, but it's only a 1/2.
No, this F, you just can't put
I hate that. Back. Yeah. Next is For the Family. This is green for an instant. It's common. Target creature gets +2/+2 until end of turn. If you control 4 or more creatures, that creature gets +4/+4 until end of turn instead. That's
1 mana for +2/+2 it has been a benchmark for a solid trick. And then the fact that sometimes this is just a huge boost for 1 mana. I'm looking C- for In the Family.
Yeah, that is a very, very high upside combat trick with a reasonable floor. Luxurious Libation. This is green X for an instant uncommon. Target creature gets +X/+X until end of turn, and you get a 1/1 green and white citizen token.
This is a funny card.
So I can. What is going on here? Yeah, because it's not great as a combat trick, although it does have that weird late game upside of like +5/+5 or whatever.
The citizen's bringing you drinks.
Oh, okay. So they show up.
So it's 1 mana for a citizen, straight up. You
can
just cast this X = 0. You do need a target, though. But the ideal case is like you pay 1 or 2, like you pay 2 or 3 mana and you win a fight for spending the minimum mana and then get a citizen. And then in the late game, it's +7/+7 if you just have nothing else to do and you just want to kill them. That seems good to me.
That's actually a thing.
I would probably give Luxurious Libation a C+. It's just got enough flexibility and the potential for a 2-for-1.
Totally. And also, we talked about how, if you're sort of leaning towards the green-white end of your family, like you're going to have citizens. That's the type of a situation where if your opponent taps out, you can just be like, attack with all of them, right? 3 of them are getting in. 1 of them's going to get +6/+6. You're dead. And that's the kind of card that can steal a game. Attended Socialite is next. This is 1 and a green for a 2/1 elf druid at common. It's got Alliance, and its Alliance trigger is it gets +1/+1 until end of turn.
Just bread and butter creature, like kind of C- level. It'll trade off a lot of times the first time it attacks.
Yeah, D+, C-. They did burn the flavor text of "Say hello to my little friend" on it, but Civic Gardener.
I guess you could reuse flavor text. I think that would.
Does that play?
Do that. Yeah.
Be uncouth. Civic Gardener, 1 and a green for a 2/2 human citizen at common, and when it attacks, you untap a creature or land.
I don't think this is going to play out as well as you might think in terms of untapping lands because it doesn't let you play a 4-drop on turn 3.
Mm-hmm.
It lets you spend 4 mana on turn 3 if you have a way to spend mana pre and post combat.
Mm-hmm.
So it's and yes, it can give something vigilance effectively or, whatever, but
Itself.
I think this is mediocre. I think this is probably like a D.
I do too. What I see here is the two best things about it are that it costs 2 mana and it's a citizen. And I don't think that those are going to be able to keep up with like a bunch of really powerful gold cards for long. Courier's Briefcase is next. It's 1 and a green for an artifact treasure at uncommon. When it enters a battlefield, you get a 1/1 green and white citizen token. You can tap this and sacrifice it to add 1 mana of any color, so treasure. And then, or you can play Wooburg, so 1 mana of each color, tap it and sacrifice it to draw 3 cards. That's pretty sweet.
So this is very much a payoff for the treasure deck where it's like, I'm a treasure if you need me to be, or if you assemble enough treasure, all of a sudden you can crack this and draw 3, and you get a 1/1 citizen to kind of keep the card parity okay. So
yeah, this
kind of reminds me a little of Prosperous Innkeeper, where instead of getting a treasure, a 1/1, then the Soul Warden ability, you kind of get the 5 mana ability instead.
This high upside kind of crack it to draw 3 late in the game thing.
If you're a deck that's got treasures and uses citizens well, this is good, which makes it kind of like a build around C. I don't think you want this in just any green deck necessarily.
No, I mean, if it didn't have that last clause, we would be not very excited about this. I don't want to pay, 2 mana
for a 1/1 plus a treasure is not.
It's just
best
okay.
deal in the world.
No, and also you can't use the mana from this to pay for its own ability because they're both tap sack. So you need to come up with 5 other ways to make.
I guess if your deck's short on fixing, this is not the worst way to fix.
Definitely not.
You get a 1/1 out of the deal, so maybe it's just a straight up C.
Yeah, let's go see on Courier's Briefcase. Yeah. I mean, I like the card, and anytime there's Wooburg on there, I'm kind of in. Prize Fight. This is 1 and a green for an instant at common. Target creature you control fights target creature you don't control, and you create a treasure token.
I love that there's multiple cards in here that have references to fighting and like rigged fights and bribes, and prize fight is just, I like the flavor a lot. It's a good card. I mean, it's a fight, so you do need to win the fight, in order to not get 2 for 1. But you get a treasure token out of the deal, that probably puts it into the C+ range.
Yeah, I think so too. And usually you can figure out how to win in a fight if you're in green. Riveteer's Decoy is next. It's 1 and a green for a 3/1 human warrior at uncommon. It must be blocked if able, and it has a blitz cost of 3 and a green.
You're going to blitz this one a lot more often.
So you blitz it, and then
they have to block with
trades for something.
Yeah, no, they don't have to block with everything, but they have to block with something. So it can really, like, the problem is if you cast this, they have a turn to set up how they want to block.
Yes.
And if you blitz it, they don't. But it's also just a 2 mana 3/1, so that forces a trade. Yeah, this is good no matter how you play it.
Yes, I think so too, because that's the main thing is that they just don't have choices early in the game. Like, they play a 1/1 or a 2/2, and you're just like, attack with my decoy, trade. And I like that. And then blitzing it later could be interesting if the situation appears.
Looks like a C+ to me.
Yeah, C+ for Riveteer's Decoy. What about Venom Connoisseur?
There's 1 and a green for a 2/2. It has Alliance, where whenever a creature enters a battlefield in your control, Venom Connoisseur gets Death Touch until end of turn. But the second time this ability resolves, all your creatures gain Death Touch.
That could be really annoying, especially with a bunch of small creatures.
Death Touch on a 2/2 is a lot better blocking than attacking, so it doesn't do that. But late game, giving all your creatures Death Touch can set you up for some really nice attacks if you can just play 2 creatures or make 2 tokens. And then at instant speed, if you have like a Cabretti Charm, make 2 tokens, they both get Death Touch.
Ooh, that's nasty. You could give your whole team Death Touch at instant speed.
I like C on Venom Connoisseur. I think this is there's a couple ways to make citizens at instant speed that can really make this thing pay off.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that. Bouncer's Beatdown is next. This is 2 and a green for an instant at uncommon. This spell costs 2 less cast if it targets a black permanent. Bouncer's Beatdown deals X damage to target creature or planeswalker, where X is the greatest power among creatures you control. If that creature or planeswalker would die this turn, exile it instead.
So what's nice about this is it's a bite where they don't fight back, but also it just looks at your biggest creature. So if they kill one of your creatures in response, it'll just look at the next biggest creature.
Right. So you could still have a backup plan to make this work.
So you have 2 3/3s in play. They can't really fizzle this. Plus, if it kills a black creature, it costs 1 mana. So I like B for Bouncer's Beatdown. This is a nice card.
Yeah, the exile thing always ends up being more relevant than it looks like, too. Broken Wings, 2 and a green for an instant at common. You can just destroy an artifact, enchantment, or creature with flying.
Probably still just a sideboard C. That's what we're looking at with these.
Yep, sideboard C. High Rise Sawjack. This is 2 and a green for a 2/3 elf citizen. At common, it's got reach, and if it blocks a creature with flying, it gets +2/+0 until end of turn.
Good defensive creature here. You really are punishing flyers. Not super exciting overall, but I find that the spiders like this, the good reach creatures, your deck needs to do something to win the game for these to be good. Just putting these in like a random red-green deck is often not that effective. No. But if, let's say, you had a really good token engine, or you're ramping into a 7-drops, then this card goes up in value. So I think it's like a C-, but if you're using it well, it can get up a little bit higher than that.
Yeah, it really does do its job, but it forces you to then find other ways to finish the game because it's just a 2-powered creature. Boy, this next one. Jewel Thief. Good Lord. This is 2 and a green for a 3/3 cat rogue at common. And if I told you that, you'd probably be like, all right. It has vigilance and trample. And when it ETBs, you create a treasure token. It's common. What is happening here?
This and the Overseer both make me wonder, like
what happened?
We've got this range of commons, and then both these are just like so far out of the range that I guess how much better is this than Murder? Well, I think it probably is better than Murder.
I think so too.
Like, I think this is probably a B, I could see it being a B+.
It's also like we've had variants on Murder over the years, right? That are like kill a thing. Murder just happens to be the kind of cleanest version of that. But at common, I've never seen a card like Jewel Thief ever.
Yeah. In a 3-color set, having a single green card that makes a treasure while also giving you a 3/3 vigilance trample. Yeah, I'm going to go B+ for Jewel Thief.
Okay. It just feels like a mistake.
Really passing the card, yeah.
I don't mean the mistake like that it's too good for the format. It just feels like they said, oops, that was supposed to be an uncommon, our bad. They never said that. So, all right. Yeah, B+ for Jewel Thief, incredible. Most Wanted, 2 and a green, enchantment aura. It's common. It has flash and enchants a creature, and the creature gets +2/+1. And when the enchanted creature dies, you get 2 treasure tokens.
I'm not in love with this because I think 2 treasure tokens is still worse than a card most of the time. Mm-hmm. And so you're putting yourself down a card here. The upside is that sometimes you'll put this on a 3/3 when they block with a 3/3, so you'll win the fight. But with only 1 toughness being granted, I don't think that's going to happen that often. So this looks like a D to me.
Yeah, I can't imagine playing Most Wanted that often and being happy about it. Those cards just never, ever get there. Social Climber is next. This is 2 and a green for a 3/2 human druid at common. Whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, you gain 1 life.
Yeah, there's not a lot of life gain payoffs. We had that like the Black Vampire. So mostly this is just like a way to gain life. Full stop. I don't think that's what the tokens decks really want to do.
I don't think so either.
A D.
And paying the cost of having to put a 3-mana 3/2 in your deck is significant. That is not the kind of stats you want these days. Warm Welcome is next. It's 2 and a green for an instant at common. Look at the top 5 cards of your library. You may reveal a creature card from among them and put it in your hand. Put the rest on the bottom in a random order and create a 1/1 green and white citizen creature token. Instant speed.
I like this card. It's a 1/1 that, at instant speed for 3 minutes also draws you a good card. I mean, you're not going to miss very often. So I like C+ for Warm Welcome. I think this card's going to play out pretty nicely.
Me too. Yeah. And the instant speed just feels like, you could have told me this is 2 and a green for a 1/1 citizen that ATBs does this. And, this is in some cases better. Next is Capenna Express. All aboard. 3 and a green for a 6/6 artifact vehicle at common. Its crew cost is 3, and you can sacrifice a treasure to crew it, basically.
I like it. You can pay the entry fee with a treasure, or you can crew it. In a deck that can make treasures, when there's a fair amount of ways, this actually looks pretty good because we saw this without the treasure ability in in Kamigawa, and it was not good.
It was bad.
Blooming Grid Sentinel or whatever. It was not great. But if you're a deck that makes 3 or 4 treasures a game and you can play this and just have it be a 6/6 some of the time, I think I'm in for that. So it looks like a build around like C. Like I don't think you're, really getting there if you enable this, but a 6/6 is still a 6/6. If you've got things to feed this, it is good. Because remember, you don't have to sack a treasure every turn. You just need to sack a treasure once or twice when you're not in a position to crew it, and then kind of let the crewing it carry from there.
Yeah.
It picks up the slack and lets you have this position where this is untapped and your opponent can't attack into it, so you don't have to sack the treasure, the threat of activation.
I mean, that's a big deal too, right? Like having a treasure plus this on the battlefield just means like you can't get attacked on the ground unless your opponent's willing to trade treasure tokens for their creatures. Like pretty good. Yeah,
so I like Capenna Express as a build around, a reward for making treasure, but I wouldn't really play it if you can't make treasure.
Okay, so build around C for Capenna Express. Next is Elegant Entourage. This is 3 and a green for a 4/4 Elf Druid at uncommon, and it has Alliance. Target creature other than Elegant Entourage gets +1/+1 and trample until end of turn. So whenever a creature ETBs on your side, you can pump up your other guys and give them trample until end of turn.
Oh, this is good. 4 mana, 4/4 with upside.
Yeah, with good
Can't
upside.
really go wrong. Looks like a B- to me.
Yeah, just solid power and toughness with good stuff. Glittermonger is next. It's 3 and a green for a 1/4 Elf Rogue at common, and you can tap it and get this. You make a treasure token.
I wasn't that impressed with Undercity Scrounger, the 3 mana version of this. A creature had to die for you to make a treasure, but even in games where you were reliably making treasures, it was like, this is okay. This isn't great. That said, we are in a 3-color set, and there's a heavier treasure theme of like sacking treasures and using them for various things. So I think Glittermonger is an enabler I'd play in a deck that really wants treasure, but I wouldn't really just play this in your like, kind of random Riveteers deck that doesn't have ways to pay you off for that.
Yeah, I want treasure stuff, but there's a lot of that. And, this is better than tap add a mana of a color, right?
Yeah.
You can save them up. And if it dies, they're still there. I would go C+ on Glittermonger. I just think it's going to find a home in the format. We've also talked a fair bit about like if you're trying to ramp, or this card would go well if you're trying to ramp. And
I could buy that.
Also, just 5-color me one time. Voice of the Vermin. This is 3 and a green for a 2/2 human citizen. Speaking on behalf of the rats, this is an uncommon. Voice of the Vermin enters the battlefield with a shield counter on it. And whenever it attacks, target creature you control has base power and toughness 4/4 until end of turn. This is kind of like the blue one that gives flying, with the shield counter. This one pumps up something to a 4/4.
And it can pump itself as well.
It can.
So you're a 4/4 with a shield counter. It is pretty good, and sometimes it'll attack and pump a 1/1 into a 4/4 instead. Looks like a B- to me in an aggressive deck. You need to be attacking, but a 4 mana 4/4 that doesn't die the first time it would die is a really good attacker.
I just also think that shield tokens are very powerful, right? I mean, we're talking about limited. Combat's kind of the name of the game, and I think that even a 2/2 with a shield token on it's pretty strong. And this one's certainly better than that. C+ for Voice of the Vermin?
Yeah, I could go C+. I think B- C+ is about where I put it.
Next is Kaldaya's Strongarm. This is 4 and a green for a 2/3 human warrior at common. It enters a battlefield. When it enters a battlefield, put 2 +1/+1 counters on target creature. Wow. And it has Blitz for 3 and a green.
You're going to want to blitz this a lot more often than cast it.
Wow, that's a beating.
Because you blitz it and you get the 2 counters on something else, and then you obviously get to hit in for 2 and draw a card. But also just casting this as like a 4/5 if you need to is fine. So I like C for Kaldaya's Strongarm. Looks like it'll play pretty well.
Yeah, I mean, imagine a sorcery that was like, you get a 2/3 haste token until end of turn, you draw a card, and you get to put 2 +1/+1 counters on something. For 4 mana. Like, that's what you've got. I'll go C+ for Kaldaya's Strongarm. That's great. Freelance Muscle. This is 4 and a green for a 4/4 Rhino Warrior. Wait, does he have a gun?
It looks like it.
It does look like it. At uncommon, whenever Freelance Muscle attacks or blocks, it gets +X until end of turn, where X is the greatest power and or toughness among other creatures you control.
I mean, this is going to attack as like a 7/7 really easily, and sometimes it'll attack as like a 9/9.
So you pick whatever the highest number is,
single stat
then
is.
That's what X is. Okay.
And this gets +X+X. So if you have a 1/5 out, this is getting +5/+5. And even a 2/2 out, this attacks as a 6/6. I would give Freelance Muscle a B and then look for ways to give it trample.
It's just huge. Yeah.
It'll attack for a lot. Yeah.
He never asks why, just who, when, and where. Wow. Take to the Streets is next. It's 4 and a green for a sorcery at common. Creatures you control get +2/+2 until end of turn. Citizens you control get additional +1/+1 and gain vigilance until end of turn.
I don't know how many people know this, though I'm sure a decent amount listening do. Overrun was Marshall's least favorite card for some amount of time. He always complained about it. And I remember I didn't know Marshall. I'm like, who's this guy who just always complains about Overrun? This guy cannot understand what he's talking about. So then I decided to do a podcast with you. Anyway, Take to the Streets.
Also, they stopped printing Overrun and Uncommon after I complained about it. I don't know if those are correlated, but.
Well, here we go. Look, Overrun.
Yeah, here it is.
So your small creatures get +1/+1 in vigilance, though there are some like medium-sized citizens. In fact, actually, we're about to see a 6/6 citizen, but most of your creatures get +2/+2. I actually think it's a changing times as well. Overrun wouldn't hit the same way these days, and this not giving trample especially is pretty big. So
that's the difference, right? I mean, trample was the problem.
Yeah.
Yeah, because now I can like lose a good chunk of my board, but still play Magic because my life total is not 2.
I think Take to the Streets is going to be good in a token deck. Going to be like a build around B+, where like if you go wide, this is a real reward for that.
Yes,
especially mostly citizens.
Citizens are getting +3/+3.
Yeah,
and you're not getting
vigilance is not that good on them because they're just 1/1 tokens. But whatever.
Yeah,
I like Take to the Streets as a build around B+.
I do too. This seems like a very good payoff for the go wide deck. That is right where you want to be. Next is Cleanup Crew. This is 4 green for a 6/6 human citizen at uncommon. When it enters the battlefield, you choose one. You can destroy an artifact or an enchantment or exile target card from a graveyard or gain 4 life.
Yeah, it's a Honey Mammoth plus. It's a Honey Mammoth that instead you could disenchant something or exile something. And
there's a reason this one's uncommon. That's a lot of different stuff.
I like Cleanup Crew. I'm going to give B- on Cleanup Crew and be pretty happy to top out my curve with a 6/6. It's probably going to gain 4 a lot of the time, but the other ones are still quite good.
Definitely. And then our last green card is Rock's Pummeler. It is 5 and a green for a 6/3 Rhino Soldier at common. Rock's Pummeler enters the battlefield with a shield counter on it, and it has trample as long as it has a shield counter on it. Sure. I really like shield counters, so maybe I'll be a little higher on this, but I just find that like random 6 mana creatures that aren't cards like Cleanup Crew just have a really tough time in these like triple colored gold sets. Yeah,
there's just so much powerful stuff going on. So I would start Rock's Pummeler at D, but I'm willing to give it a try. This is one that could perform a little better maybe.
Yeah, if the shield counter really is good, then it could be good. All right, we've got a few, very few actually, colorless cards and then some lands, and then we're done. First artifact is Arc Spitter. This is 1 mana for an equipment. It's uncommon. Equip cost is 1. So this is right where you want to be. What does it do? The equipped creature has pay 1. This creature deals 1 damage to target creature that's blocking it.
So you can continue doing that. So you put this on your like 2/2 and you have 2 mana untapped. They block with their 2/2 and you're like, bam, pay 2. Your guy takes 2.
Okay. Knock off a shield counter.
Yeah, you can knock off shields nicely.
If you've got 5 mana, it's like the ultimate threat of active, like, right? Like if
it's basically like, you can spend a bunch of mana to kill anything that blocks it, but of course they still get to block it. So it's pretty good on a trampler, I guess.
Yes. It also means that like double blocks probably don't work very well because you could kill the smaller of the 2 in most cases.
Yeah. This card's interesting.
It's mana intensive. Yeah, I haven't seen a design like this. It seems like it would be really annoying if your opponent had it, like in a stalled out board or something.
But it's also like, how good is an equipment that's just like 1 to play, 1 to equip creatures unblockable?
It's medium. And it's like it's unblockable, but they can block it is kind of the weird part too.
And
like
you spend mana.
And make you spend mana. Oof, boy, you just took me down like 2 notches with that little.
Oh, well.
Wow. Okay, I'm going to start Arc Splitter off at D. And until I start losing to this stupid card and being really annoyed, I will then bump it up to B- at some point. So that's
I
where
like
I'm
D
at.
for Arc Splitter. I suspect this is one we're going to get feedback on.
This
We'll see.
This is one of the weirdest cards. This next one is Cement Shoes. So, in the movies, right, they put somebody's feet in cement and then sink them down to the bottom of the ocean or whatever. This is a little different. So Cement Shoes is 1 for an artifact equipment. It's uncommon. Its equip cost is 2. And it says equipped creature gets +3/+3 and has at the beginning of your end step, tap this creature. And the equipped creature doesn't untap during its controller's untap step. So their version of it is like it makes you better because you have really heavy feet and can stomp on stuff, but then you get tired and can't get up.
And there's no way around it because you can't like attack and then move this onto an untapped creature because it'll just tap the creature in a turn.
It'll tap
Like,
the other one. Yeah.
You're down a creature and every turn. This looks really bad to me.
It's horrible. This is something that was supposed to go on your opponent's. I'd almost rather be able to equip this to my opponent's creature somehow.
Yeah, I would give Cement Shoes an F. I think it's too clunky. It's just going to be too much mana, losing too many creatures. It's just going to be too much.
It also just kind of missed on what the whole, anyway. Ominous Parcel is next. It's 1 mana for an artifact at common. You can pay 2 mana, tap it, and sacrifice it to search your library for a basic land card, reveal it, put it into your hand, and then shuffle. Or you can pay 5 mana, tap it, and sack it to do 4 damage to a creature. Man,
I like
3
the idea
mana to get the land in my hand, though.
Of mana fixing that can also deal damage instead, be a card, but this is too expensive. I don't think you want to play Ominous Parcel. So
it just feels too expensive on both sides, even with the flexibility built in.
yeah, I would give it a D.
D. Gilded Pinions is 2 mana for an artifact equipment. It's common. Equip cost is 2. Equipped creature gets flying. And when it enters the battlefield, you get a treasure token.
I like this well enough. I think that in a deck that needs treasure and has big creatures, which red-green is kind of like the place you're looking at, this looks kind of like a C-.
Yes, because the last time that we've seen give a creature flying be good is when it was played in red-green. So yeah, it slots in. Halo Scarab is next. This is 2 mana for a 2/1 artifact creature insect at common. And you can pay 2 mana and exile it from your graveyard to make a treasure token.
This looks solid. I mean, it's another one of these. It seems like they put a 2 mana 2/1 or something equivalent in every set that gives you a little value. And there was like Paperweight Decoy was the other one.
Decoy, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I like Halo Scarab well enough, and it's good in a sack deck, and it gives you a treasure. So it looks like a C-. Just
sure.
It's a card you could put in your deck and not be too unhappy about.
Yeah, especially if you care about treasure. Suspicious Bookcase. Love that name. 2 mana for an artifact creature wall at uncommon. It's a 0/4 with Defender, and you can pay 3 mana and tap it to make target creature not be able to be blocked this turn.
I think the card is a great flavor, but I've never found it to be good. I would give this card an F, even though it's uncommon here.
It is uncommon here. Was it uncommon before? Yeah, I guess it was.
Oh, was it?
Yeah. I think they just don't. I think people find this ability really annoying and they don't want to lose to it. But it's really just expensive and not enough of a card on its own to justify it being in your deck generally. Chrome Cat is next. It's 3 mana for a 3/2 cat. It's common. When Chrome Cat enters the battlefield, scry 1.
This is the epitome of a D. If you have to play this card, you're not thrilled, but it will do the job.
Quick Draw Dagger is 3 mana for an artifact equipment at common. It's got flash. Equip cost is 1. Equip creature gets +1/+1. And when it enters the battlefield, attach it to target creature you control, and that creature gains first strike until end of turn.
That's kind of nice. So it's kind of like the Wandering Emperor. The first turn you play it, it's got this like additional ability, in this case, first strike. And then after that, it kind of loses it. But you play this, you win a fight, and then you have a Leonin Scimitar, a 1 mana +1/+1 equip.
That's pretty good. If you can win that fight, that's good.
And +1/+1 on first strike's enough to win most fights. This looks like a C- to me. I think this will be happy enough. How do you feel when they attack turn 3, you block with your 2-drop, and they cast this? You're like, well, I lost my 2-drop. Now they have a 3/3, and then this dagger is floating around. You don't feel good about that, and that does not seem like an unrealistic setup.
No, yeah, that sounds reasonable. I think the thing that'll hold a card like this back is that like this set doesn't care about artifacts or equipment, or it just doesn't really interact with anything else. It just has to be good on its own. Scuttling Butler is next. It's 3 mana for a 4/1 artifact creature constructed uncommon. At the beginning of combat on your turn, if you control 2 or more multicolored permanents, Scuttling Butler gains double strike until end of turn. It goes from like reasonable blocker as 4 power for 3 mana that you can trade up potentially, and a really not good attacker, to a really good attacker if you can get it going with the double strike.
I don't know how likely it is this just triggers, but if you're triggering this half the time, probably a great card. 4/1 double strike is a monster.
It is.
And then, like you said, 4/1 is a good blocker.
Yeah, you can still trade it off for things that cost as much or more mana.
Yeah.
I'd say it's a C+ for Scuttling Butler. I mean, I'm not super thrilled, but yeah. Ooh, Brass Knuckles, 4 mana for an artifact equipment at uncommon. It has equip cost of just 1, and the equipped creature has double strike as long as 2 or more equipment are attached to it. And when you cast this spell, you copy it.
You get a token.
You get 2 Brass Knuckleses.
And you have to equip both to make it one in each hand so you can fight with your Brass Knuckles.
So funny.
It's a little too expensive for my tastes. Like, the equipped cost isn't too much. It's effectively 2. But 4 to cast, 2 to equip, double strike equipment is a little on the pricey side.
Yeah, you could, if you were in an equipment deck, right, you could have your quick draw dagger on one creature and put 1 Brass Knuckles, and then that one has double strike, and then your whatever on the other, but whatever. That's getting a little bit much. So you're off of it? You don't like it?
I don't think this is good. I would give it a dis and F.
Okay. It is a lot. Last artifact is called Paragon of Modernity. It's 4 mana for a 2/2 artifact creature, Angel Warrior at common, and it's got flying, so 4 mana 2/2 flying, but you can pay 3 mana to give it +1/+1 until end of turn, and if you paid exactly 3 colors of mana were spent on that ability, it gets a counter, a +1/+1 counter instead of just until end of turn.
Yeah, you have to activate it twice with this to really start going off, but then your opponent's in a lot of pain because you're like, all right, attack with 5/5, attack with a 6/6,
right? Pumping
this twice a turn. I guess this is probably a fine finisher that you probably shouldn't play most of the time.
Yeah, I agree.
C- level.
That's what I think too. It isn't terrible, but it is very mana intensive.
You're going to have games when you and your opponent have stalled out and they play this on 7 mana with 3 colors up, and you're like, I have to kill that or I'm dead.
Yes.
They're going to make it a 3/3 and then untap and make it a 5/5 and attack. It's a lot of trouble. But if this is in your opening hand, you're like, cast this on turn 4. I'm not activating it till turn 8. So, yeah, I would give a C- to Paragon of Modernity, and it's got some finishing potential.
I think so too. It does. Stalled out board, that thing is a threat that they actually have to deal with. Okay, we've got 10 cards left, but they're actually like 2 cards to cover because they're 2 cycles of lands, but they're going to be really, really important in this set. So the first cycle are dual lands that enter the battlefield tapped, tap for the 2 allied colors, and then they all have the same ability at the end, which is that you can pay 2 mana plus 1 each of the color that they make and sacrifice them to draw a card. So I'll give an example. Skybridge Towers, which is the blue-white version. These are all common, by the way. So ETB's taps for blue or white, and you can pay 2 blue-white, tap it, and sack it to draw a card. I love these. Man, if we could get these or the Scrylands from Strixhaven or whatever in every single set, I would be pretty stoked. These really help out your mana and give you something to do late that's not busted by any stretch, but is relevant to the game in the case that you flood out. And there's one of these for white, blue, blue, black, red, green, and green, white.
Yeah, all the allied colors.
Mm-hmm. These are like C pluses, right?
Yep. I was just about to say that. All these are C pluses. You should take these highly. Other people will be doing so because, it's a 3-color set. Tap duals are just what you need to make your decks function. You're going to want to play 3 colors most of the time. And then, yeah, like you said, sacking these later is just incredible. So C+ on the sack lands. And then there's another cycle of lands as well.
Yeah. Yeah, so
So
these are kind of interesting. So I'm going to read one, and then we'll go over there. There's one for each family worth of colors. So Broker's Hideout is common land. Again, all these 10 that we just covered are all common. When it enters the battlefield, sacrifice it. When you do, search your library for a basic forest, plains, or island card and put it onto the battlefield tapped, and then you gain a life after you shuffle. And then there's one for each.
I like the design of these a lot for Arena, especially because they're in Evolving Wilds that just force you to sacrifice it right away.
Yes.
So you can't just sit there and have priority over and over again.
Oh, that's great. So you never have to wait for the person to do it on your own end step just to keep the land from you, which is what I do, by the way, and now I don't have to do it. That's great.
I don't. I just sack my land right away.
Yeah.
But now you have to. And, getting a life plus they fix for one of your 3 colors. But of course, once you've chosen, they don't fix for the other ones, unlike the duels that are 2 at once. But yeah, these are great in a 2 or 3 color deck. And then gaining a life is a nice little edge too. So I like these. They're slightly worse than the other lands. So but they're still steep C pluses. Like you should prioritize these. Like if you're drafting brokers and you see a Broker's Hideout, like this is what you need. Your goal is to end up with like 3 lands per set or per draft, and, or 2 and like maybe 2 of the like cycle you can pay 2 and exile them. But if at the end of the draft you're trying to play 3 colors with like a 7/7/3 mana base or an 8/6/5 mana base or whatever, or 8/6/4 mana base, like you're just not going to have a good time. So try to pick up these lands if you can.
Yeah, the other things to note about them is that they do sacrifice. So if you have cards that care about that, you may want to hold on to it until you play this and get the trigger or whatever. And then also, as we mentioned before, they do go right into your graveyard. And in fact, the other cycle does too eventually and gives you 0 if you are trying to count up. So I assume that Maestro's Theater would be probably the most popular of these because it just spots you 1/5 of the thing that one of the things that Maestros cares about in your graveyard right away. So these are just little tips to hang on to as well.
And of course, you can take Maestro's Theater even if you're Riveteers because it gets red or black.
Totally.
So you're not limited to the one that's all 3 of your colors. Even the 2 color versions are good.
And then also, like, is there going to be a 5 color deck? Kind of has to be, right? So there you go. All right, that's going to do it. That is the Streets of New Capenna set review, commons and uncommons. As always, with these 3 color sets, I echo what you said at the beginning of the episode, Luis. These are generally really fun to play. They push the complexity a bit, and they kind of release the ceiling too. Like you can usually go pretty deep with these 3, 4, sometimes 5 color decks and kind of see what you can come up with. So it'll be really, really cool to dive in. Just make sure that you cover your mana. That's kind of the main thing. And then we'll, of course, be talking about the rares and mythics next week on the show so that you can kind of go deep on those. That's one of our favorite shows to do as well, because that's where they really go crazy with the designs. That is going to do it for this episode of LR. Thank you so much for hanging out with us. We really appreciate you taking the time, especially for these long set review shows, to hang with us and kind of dive deep into the new sets as they come out. We want to thank our sponsors channel, fireball.com. Make sure you check them out for anything you need. Streets of New Capenna, pre-order, that kind of stuff. You can do it at CFB right now. And if you do so, if you'd use the affiliate code LR, we do appreciate it. Thank you to FTX. That's the safe, regulated place to manage all of your digital assets. If you head over to ftx.com, outside of the US, ftx.us within, you can get all the information that you need to sign up and get on board with them. We thank them for their support. And of course, we thank you for yours via the Patreon, patreon.com/limited resources. If you want to find us on social media, I'm Marshall_LR and Luis is LSV. And you can find everything related to the podcast over at lrcast.com. It's all there, all the episodes, this episode, everything else. You can go back in time and listen to old shows, etc., to level up your game. And that's going to do it for this one. Thanks so much for hanging out. We'll see you next time.
So there's a cool show that I just finished watching that you may have heard of, Severance.
I have heard of it.
Yeah, it's on
I've not seen it.
Apple TV. That's where it is. There's a lot of streaming services. It's actually pretty annoying, but it's kind of like Lost, but delivers in the sense that it's got a lot of mystery. It's not quite as grandiose, but I think that was part of Lost's problem.
Right.
So the basic premise of the show is that there's this procedure called severance where you live now 2 lives where the people who have been severed, they go to work. And as soon as they get in the elevator and go down, they have no memory of their life outside of work. And they have this new, like, persona who only remembers being at work. It's like if your brain shut down and you effectively went to sleep. So the equivalent would be like you go to work, it's like you fell asleep and then you wake up right when you come out of work. Like you're just like you're standing. You walk in the door at 9 o'clock in the morning, and then you walk out at 5 p.m. You don't know what happened those last 8 hours. You were just like in stasis, and now you're ready to go home. And like the reason that the given, the surface reason is you get to go do your job without stressing about your job, and you just get to basically live the like evenings and weekends. So like you kind of like instead of you got to fast forward through a part of life that some people find unpleasant. Obviously, a lot of people have jobs they don't like. Mm-hmm. Of course, there's a lot more sinister things going on. And even the core conceit is like, and I'm not going to spoil anything here, by the way, mm-hmm. I'm consigning my other self to this hellish existence where all they do is work. They wake up and they're at work in the elevator, getting off of work or getting into work. And then when it's time for them to leave, they get in the elevator and then they wake up the next, like literally to them instance later, as if they just got to work. Uh-huh. They just work nonstop,
That's so brutal.
Yeah, there's a lot of weird stuff going on, but it makes you wonder. Like, imagine a Magic tournament where you had to go through this. So everyone shows up and they show up with a deck, but they don't know anything about it. Their other self picked the deck, and then they have to play it, or they have to crack a set. It's a way to know you crack a set. But then that would be the reverse, because I have to live my normal life, and just do all this like normal life stuff. And my other self just gets to live a life where all they do is play Magic tournaments. Their life starts and stops at the Magic tournament hall, where they just wake up walking into a PT and then don't wake up till it's time for another one.
That sounds exhausting.
No, it sounds like the dream.
Yeah, I know you're excited about it.
Well, for you, it would be like you walk in and then you just have to do coverage, and then you go to sleep, then you walk in and you're doing coverage again.
Oh God.
Never-ending life of coverage. So the real dream, actually.
Yeah, there you go.
For me, I think I'd probably get the severance procedure done so that all the time I spend podcasting, I don't remember. I just show up.
Oh, come on. That was a knock at BK, right? Not at me.
Oh, totally. Well, wait, why was there a knock at BK?
I'm not answering.
Do I do a podcast with BK that I don't know about?